Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Avi Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side. All right, welcome, my friend.
Well, thank you, Ellie. Thanks for having me back.
Beautiful, it's good to have you back.
It's great to be here.
A little bit of a different setup, but we're here. So last time you were here was around 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Or so. Okay. So one thing I should warn you of, no warnings. We'll go right into the podcast. Okay.
Unwarned.
But you're feeling the effects of the cold plunge. I see. We just did a cold plunge right before we got in here.
I am.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's good. Got it. Even though you're a regular at this point.
I am a regular. I guess it's the cold plunge and the nerves together.
If as much changes from this podcast as in the last podcast, then you're screwed.
It's a big moment when you're nervous. Your body knows.
Yes, it's I think it's one of the good signs that we're alive.
When we're nervous.
We're doing things that make us nervous. Yeah.
I liked what you said the other day about how do you know if someone healed?
Okay.
If he's passionate.
Yes.
Conversation with your father.
Yeah.
Thought about that a lot. I thought that was a very good description.
Right. Yeah, I was having a conversation with a family member about, healing. If someone's on the path, they're doing better. How do you know if they're doing better? What do you measure it by? How do you know if someone's not doing so well? What's the measure? And I didn't feel like they had a clear answer. It's like if they're doing good, if they're doing better, if they're happy. And they asked me if I did, and I said, yeah, I think when someone's passionate, like if someone's passionate about life, because if you think about, we're alive, right? So objectively, we're alive. You and I are alive right now, but there are ways we could be more alive and less alive. And if someone's passionate, they're like, oh, the guy's fully alive. He's firing on all cylinders. He's passionate.
Yeah. Yeah, and happiness is a process. When you're in passion, there's happiness. You look back and you're like, wow, I was happy.
Right, but passion is not necessarily joy. It's not necessarily happiness. It's just I'm doing something that I am passionate about, I deeply care about.
No, I'm saying like when you look back at years, like, oh, I was extremely passionate that year over a specific project, you'd be like, oh wow, that was a happy year. It was a good year.
Yes. Yeah, if we're
it's
doing
a byproduct of passion.
If we're doing things we're passionate about, it's a very good sign. I've shared it before on this podcast. There's certain times I learn a sikha and I feel like it changes me. And there was one which the way I understood it, the way I understood this sikha was that it was talking about passion, and I understood it to mean that we can trust passion, meaning, when someone says, oh, just because someone's passionate about something, it means they're healed. Let's say someone's passionate about sports and they're watching, watching sports all day. So they're passionate. Is this, like, how do I know this is good? And a lot of things, for example, someone could be passionate about could not fit the exact mold of, let's say, the yeshiva system, for example, of what we were trained for in the yeshiva system. And when I learned this sikha, my interpretation of it was that the Rebbe was encouraging passion and saying trust passion. The sikha was in Parshas Tzav on the concept of Eish tamid tukad al mizbeach le'sichba, that there should always be a fire burning on the mizbeach. And the Rebbe explains that there's the temple, right? The temple that was in Israel, the temple in Jerusalem, and during that time, there was always meant to be a fire lit on the altar, the mizbeach. And the Rebbe says that the practical application for us now is that we're an internal Beis HaMikdash, we're an internal temple, and the representation of the altar of the mizbeach is our heart, and for there be always a fire. And I think Rashi says on the pasuk, Tamid afilu b'Shabbos afilu b'tumah. So the way I took from reading, I don't remember his exact words, but the way I took from it was, like, even when someone is in a state of tumah, if their heart is alive,
wow,
then trust it. It's going to lead to a good. It's going to lead to a good,
wow.
A good place.
Wow. Wow. There's what to work with.
Yes.
So long as someone's alive, it could get stirred in the right direction.
I think also it's a signal that someone is in touch with their soul. Right? The signal that's coming back, that signal of passion is, okay, now you're on the path of where your soul expression is.
Even though it could be directed in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and I think it'll catch up. That's, I think, the point. For example, give me an example. I'm trying to think, early days when I started speaking, I was passionate about when I started learning to public speak, I was passionate about it. Maybe some of my speeches weren't perfect. Maybe there was a good amount of anger that had to be filtered out of me. Maybe more than one of my speeches were purge sessions in front of hundreds of people. And I was purging my trauma, my pain, my anger, whatever. It was very possible. But I was also passionate about it. And I think that for myself, it led me to a much better place. I was in an exploration, and I was touching on something. I was touching on something important.
I hear you. Now, I'm just thinking, like, someone's passionate about making money. Like, how's that not just greed? Or is that maybe not passion we're talking about?
Someone's passionate about making money.
Like, is it going to lead him somewhere? It is a good sign. Like,
he's
alive.
It's definitely a good sign. Yeah, it's definitely a good sign.
It is a sign of healing.
Right.
I mean, it could be like what you're saying is like, how do I know someone healed? Like, someone's not doing well. Like, once they're alive again, that's like the heart's beating again. So even if he's trying to make money, it's like, okay, that's step one. He's back. He's back to life.
Right. It will lead to something.
Right.
Meaning, if it's not, I was definitely much more passionate about making money at some points than I am today. I think overall it did good for me. Passion did good. Does it mean it's the end result because someone's passionate about something? Does it mean they've reached a destination? No, but the more
it's
we
a
see of that,
resuscitation a little bit of a person.
The more we see of that, I think I'll connect it to different concepts. I was working with a coach, and sometimes messages start coming from a variety of different places, and he started talking to me about the concept of play, and it was coming up, and then I recently did a move. And when you move, you empty out your drawers, place, and those things that you want to keep, but you never look at, all of a sudden start getting pulled out. So I had the notes from 2019, my first medicine journey. And in it was filled with things about play and joy and everything else. And I'm reading these notes, and I'm like, wow, I'm still integrating. Like, some of the ideas from it I followed up on, and some of the ones were just kind of left. They were ideas that I never pursued. I'd written those, during and after. And it was the first one, a lot of different ideas came to me. And one of the recurring themes there was about play and how important play was.
Right.
And an association I made afterwards is, most people who are abused talk about going through a process of being groomed.
Right.
So in my case, the way I was groomed was that the guy who abused me found ways to play with me. And by play with me, I mean games, and eventually also play with me. But I meant, I meant, like, he taught me to play the piano. He taught me sports. He taught me, there was a lot of play that was there, which became an important message in the journey for me, that because of that, play became associated with danger.
Right. Wow.
So maybe I got more serious than I otherwise would have, if not for that. But the other part of it was that there was something I was looking for, right? As a young child, I was lacking play, and I was seeking it out. And he saw that, and that's what he lured me in with. So the final note that I wrote in my journey, my oldest son was about a year old, was that if I learn to play, I will heal, and my son won't need to. Meaning that part of the reason I ended up going down that path was because I was missing play from my life. Anyway, so I read these notes, and I was thinking, like, what is this? Why was it so important? Why did it come up on my first journey? What is this idea of play? And it still hadn't landed for me, clearly, right? It was a part that hadn't been integrated. And as it happened, I had a coaching session that day where that came up as a topic. And it came up as a topic, a little bit of a sidebar. I'll tell you, it came up as a topic. He said that there's 6 or 7, this is his framework for coaching. There's 6 or 7 areas of life that are important. And if we neglect to give them attention, they suffer. So these are what he called domains, like all these areas of domains and domains in our life that are important. So for marriage is a domain. Our physical health is a domain. Our career is a domain. Like if we neglect these things, they fall apart, and then our life gets impacted. And one of those that he wrote was, I think, play or joy. I forgot the exact word he used. Oh, he used the word leisure. So I was like, why is this so important? I had a lot of questions around that. Why is it so important? What decays if that's not there? Like, I understand marriage, I understand relationships, I understand physical health, but what decays if that's not there? And he was kind of stumped a little by the question. He was surprised by it. He didn't at first have the language for it, but we started exploring it. And then at the same time, the same day I have that discussion with him, I find my notes from my first medicine journey, which has the same theme. So I understood that I was touching on something important. And what I arrived at after several weeks of exploration was that joy, and maybe passion is connected, that's why I'm talking about this, that play, the idea of play is something we do only because it brings us joy. Like, for example, this, I'm playing right now. I don't know if you can tell, right? This is my play. I'm not getting paid for it. There's no reason I can stop the podcast at any point. Just my play, right? And the only reason I'm doing it is because it brings me joy. So why is that important? Why is that important to have? Is because something that brings us joy awakens and nurtures a part of our soul. And if neglected, a part of us dies. In other words, engaging in this is so important in order to keep us alive and ticking. And I went through this whole exploration, and then I started noticing it with my children, that when I'm playing with them, what are we doing? We're saying, okay, this is where we're found an area where we both experience joy, which means our essences are touching in some way. Like my essence and their essence are suddenly being brought out and nurtured in some way. And without play, we wouldn't understand this part of ourselves. So to bring that full circle back to passion. Yeah.
It's very deep. It's just like on a side note, like I notice, first of all, play, it's like a deep communication that's happening between you and the person you're playing with. It's like like your souls are meeting at like a deep level. Like I only like recently started realizing this. I'm so used to like talking as being like the only form of connecting with another person. And like recently I think I was playing like football with my nephews. Like we played for an hour, and like this was so much fun. Like I don't have like a ton to talk about with them. They're 12 years old, 13 years old. And like, but like we connected on like a deep level after like we finished doing that. Like for me, like the only way of like connecting has been talk. Like talk, I'll listen to you, I'll hear you out, I'll give you ideas, we'll laugh. But like, then there's like this like soul communication. This is very, like most people understand this. I just like at least in the culture I grew up with, like the only form of connection is through talk.
Right.
And here it's like you're meeting the person at a very deep level.
In a very different way, yes.
Through play. It's like wow, like I feel close. I feel like we bonded. And there wasn't a lot of conversation, but it was just like we were there.
Yes, and if you pay attention, I started noticing just afterwards with my kids the kind of things that bring them joy. So one of my kids, for example, always wants to learn new things. And he's like more technical. He's like, how does this work? How does that work? Right? And that's his play. It's very exciting. Another one of my children is just like for the fun of it. Right? So like the most exciting thing we can do is a puddle. Like, let me jump in it and it'll splash all over the place. That's that's touching something very different than someone who's curious what will happen when they jump in the puddle. They're doing the same thing, but it's like, oh, how come this one splashes this high and that one splashes this high? How come on stone it splashes more than if I do it on grass? Right? There's just, even though it can look like the same activity, I started noticing that it's touching something very, very different about them. And the more we can nurture that, and the more we can access that and nurture that, the more of us is alive. And I don't know, is play,
passion,
joy, is that very different than?
I'm sure they're both talking to.
Right. Passion has a purpose element. Passion has a purpose element to it. Feels like it. Like there's something at the.
There's a drive.
What?
There's a drive.
Yeah. There's some goal here that I'm seeking to achieve with passion. That's what it feels like. But I think it's still the same idea of nurturing and keeping alive parts of us that are truly unique.
Yeah.
From this same coach, it's I've been working with Mike DeSanti, who did the Sweat Lodge at the first Adama.
Oh yeah.
So he shared something interesting. Again, I've shared it here, but that when at the beginning of our healing journey, we can make the mistake of thinking that our problems are very unique. But as we start talking, we find out that everyone has 6, 7, or 8 type of problems. Relationship, financial, health, childhood trauma of sorts, whatever. We have a few buckets of problems, and very quickly, there's a lot of camaraderie on it. It's like, oh, you too, me too. And as people start talking, there's a shared experience that very quickly happens. So he says, we make the mistake of thinking that our problems are unique and that our gifts are commonplace. And really, it's the reverse. Our problems are fairly commonplace and our gifts are very unique, which again touches back to that passion point. That if we keep that alive, we're also keeping alive this unique part of us that's unique to us as an individual. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to talk about, how did we go off on that tangent?
I don't remember.
Doesn't matter. We can watch a replay afterwards. So when you did the podcast in May, a good amount has changed since then. So let's talk about some of those things.
A lot of good things have changed. First of all, I feel like so many people have been reaching out to me, and I feel like I'm talking about sex much more often.
The amount of people, it's incredible how many people reach out to me asking for your number. A lot. Really a lot.
And I mean
30, 40, 50. I gave your number out.
I feel free to. And like anyone watching this, I'm more than happy to talk to people. I find it very purposeful. Like I'm finding so many people are holding. Not that I'm like any great therapist or coach. Most people just need to talk. And it's like there's so much people are holding on to for so many years, and so many people, like I'm talking on the phone, it's like their first time sharing some of the most basic, things that they've never shared in their life, and it's just that alone is so healthy for people.
Just to get it out.
Yeah, and like to me, I like the way you titled the podcast, "The Spiritual Fight of the Generation." I don't know, maybe I mentioned it, but I really believe that, and like I don't think there's any greater. For me, at least, I find this to be a very strong calling. Like, this is like in all the Rabbeim's Matevas, it says, V'rabim heishiv me'aven. They brought many people back from sin. This is literally like, I don't know what about tshuva is if it's not someone who's leaking his godly energy, all of his strength and vitality is being leaked. And like being able to reclaim it. If that's not tshuva, then what's tshuva?
We're returning back to ourselves.
It's like literally returning back to our life force.
Right, our energy is focused here now.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful, and it's a very powerful work to be involved in, and it's.
Oftentimes it's referred to certainly chatas neurim, right, the sins of our youth, which suggests, but there's also some references to it being. the sin, or does that make sense?
The sin?
I'm trying to think. I know recently I saw something. I've been learning a little bit of Tamer Dvara.
Yeah.
So
a little fascinating. Yeah.
So
you have to in the show. I mean.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll go a little bit of what happened. But recently, the House of Moore started a shul, and you and Leah came down as the rabbi and rebbetzin.
Yes.
Of the community, the growing Southwest Ranches community, and a Sefer Torah shortly afterwards. A Sefer Torah was donated, and this Sefer Torah had been written for the Ramak. The Ramak was the Arizal teacher of Moshe Cordovero.
Yeah.
And one of the books he wrote was Tamer Dvara.
I don't know if the Arizal's teacher, but he was. I mean,
the Arizal called him his teacher.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I think there's like a question, like how the Arizal was maybe in his lifetime
for about a year.
Yeah, they overlapped for a year.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But
he definitely, the Arizal eulogized the Ramak.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there was something that the Ramak said someone's going to
come after him. Whose Kabbalah is going to be a little bit different.
Right, but he gave a certain sign, and it was very clear right afterwards it was Arizal. And from my understanding, Arizal referred to him as his teacher. Doesn't mean his only teacher.
No, right.
As his teacher. Anyways, he wrote this book, Tamer Dvara, fascinating book. And in it, he talks about, which interestingly is very connected to Adama. Because I don't know if it was him or the person who wrote the introduction, or someone who wrote an introduction for it, said that, Adam, what is like Tamer Dvara, what is it trying to teach, is how to be a man, right? Essentially, Adam al-Elyon.
That's what we're doing here.
So,
search for more.
Right, very connected. So Adam, it comes from the name. One of the reasons we're named Adam is because of Adam al-Elyon, right? We're like our Creator. So the Ramak says how to become like our Creator. And he talks about the Yud Gil Midrashim, the 13 attributes of mercy and compassion, and that if we do these 13 things, then now we are emulating our Creator, we're like our Creator. He says otherwise, otherwise it's like a terrible thing, because physically we resemble God, but in practice and our actions, we don't at all. Anyway, so he goes through the whole pasuk that of the 13 attributes, and he breaks it down, each one explaining what does it mean, Miel Kamecha, Naisei Ava, and Avral Pesha, right? And he goes through each portion. And one of the things he says in it, I don't know, connecting it to this, is when someone gives us something, when someone does something for us, we shouldn't say, oh, they did something and they also hurt us, right? So we're going to count one against the other. It's like, no, if they did something, give them their due. He says God doesn't subtract. God doesn't say, oh, 10 good deeds, 10 sins. The guy did nothing.
Right.
Zero. He says, no, the 10 sins have to be dealt with, but those God can delay and mercy. But the 10 positive things all have to be taken care of and repaid, and we have to do the same. And the example he says is that, for example, for a wife, I guess these are not his words, but saying for someone we're married to, we can have a lot of complaints and a lot of issues, and a lot of everything else that one may have with them, especially if they're good at Ezer Kenegdei, that there are many, many things that we can say subtract, but he says that if they do two things, number one, they raise our kids, and number two, they keep us from sin. So I understood keep us from sin certainly is.
You saying the sin?
That's where I was bringing it back to. That's where I felt when he said keep us from sin. I figured he was talking about sexual sins. I'm sure the wife keeps us from other sins also, but that's the way I understood it.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about tshuva and sex, it definitely seems very.
It's definitely what is holding someone back from any other possible spiritual growth. Like. Often I'll talk to people, I have to talk to when I speak to people, literally my own story is that when I was stooped in sex addiction, like I had zero, I was a religious Jew, I was keeping Shabbos, eating kosher, but there was just doubt, a lot of questions, zero passion, there was no, you're completely closed out of your gut. There's no, you're living in other people's energy in a certain sense. Like you have no. So if you're living in other people's energy, you have no feel. You have no gut. You have no
When you say living in other people's, meaning the decisions you're making are because someone else wants you to make it as opposed to your own.
I feel like you don't have access to yourself. You don't have access to your power. So it's like, how could you possibly be passionate about Judaism? It's when you're completely depleted of any access to who you are. You're constantly just hungry for the next fix. I guess this applies with all addiction, but like especially with sex addiction, it's like it's gutting you of any.
Is it fair to say that someone who has quote unquote everything in order, but sexually they're, the right word I want to use, sexually, promiscuous, or they're not. They're not doing what needs to be done there, right? They're not on their P's and Q's when it comes to their sexuality. That even if on the outside it looks like everything's together, then they're not there, obviously. And the reverse is...
First of all, how's everything together? Their marriage is obviously not there.
For sure. But I'm saying, like you were talking about Shabbos, kosher,
right?
Of course everything's
what I'm saying is that like there's so much... Sveikas and Emunah. Like I'll talk to someone and it's like, I'm from, but I don't know. I have questions. And like they can't make that link between their sex addiction and all their Sveikas and Emunah. Like to me, it's one and of the same.
Right.
It's like your boat has a massive hole in the bottom of it. Like you're gonna have a lot of other problems that are gonna start piling up, and you can't address those problems unless you focus on the core.
Understood. Yeah, right. My main point of saying what I said before was actually to get to the reverse, where someone is just taking care of that, and they're really very careful about sexually that their energy is intact. They're focused if they're married. They're focused on their wife. If not, they're using their sexuality in the correct way,
right,
in a healthy way. That then the rest will.
Slowly, there's what to build on. I don't think like...
To me, I would say if someone's there's a lot.
Right, there's a lot to build with. There's a lot to work with.
Yeah, it's hard to... It forces so much together.
Right.
In order for... At least for me, I saw that, which I wouldn't put myself at perfect at all. But first of all, it's an infinite game.
Right,
sexuality.
It's
but there's still areas that I continue to notice that I need to work on, right? That aren't necessarily as obvious as they once were, regular pornography or other kind of habits, but still, what thoughts or distractions or whatever it is. And the work that it took to even get to where I am with it, or where I often am with it, has forced me to clean up a lot of other things.
Right. Because it's such a big, I feel like we're talking
it's so central.
In general terms, but like it requires so much consciousness and focus to combat such subtle things that like you're really pulling a lot of your inner resources together. I'll say it this way, like a lot of people don't realize like, okay, I'm not, even if they're like not watching porn, like they could, I don't want to sound too hardcore, but it's like, okay, we're not on a podcast. Let me no, like what I want to say is that like, there's so much work to be, not to be eating other people's sexual energy, like to be clean with internally. And so many people could, let's say, not be, like, I was sober in SA, not masturbating, not watching porn, yet leaking sexual energy.
Right.
And like in that job of like climbing stages, in I don't call it tahara, like I call it purity, call it wanting to live in my own space and not every conversation, every interaction with a female, every news article. Like to me, like right now, news is very toxic. Like I have similar reactions, like towards even regular news. as I had towards pornography. Like I could feel like the vortex of like being pulled out of myself once I like just checking, where the elections are holding. I slowly, I'm slowly being pulled out of my power. But I don't want to go there because that's not even sexually related. But just really understanding when am I taking, when am I feeding off other people's sexual energy and when am I not? And I think to what you're saying, I think in that pursuit, like a lot of our life slowly starts to come together. Like we start being much more sensitive towards everything.
For sure. For example, I noticed I couldn't get to certain places with lack of sleep, with overeating in a certain way. You know that feeling when you've had 2 burgers and 3 beers and you're when I say beers, forget the beers because that misses my point. But let's say 2 or 3 burgers. Right. And you feel like you're drunk on food. Yeah. That was a very toxic place for me to be at when it came to, when I was there, it was too closely related to pornography. It felt like one and the same. Meaning I needed a certain amount of gas in the tank, so to speak, in order to be able to stay focused with my sexual energy.
Right.
That if I got drunk on food, if I didn't sleep enough, then all of these things would.
Right.
If I overworked, it's like I sit in the office from early in the morning to 11 p.m. at night. I used to do it all the time, but that kind of, it's not super focused work. It's just kind of the work that's at the. You can still sit there and go from one task to the next, but you're not 100% on. It was very difficult to stay sober in those in those spaces, and I found certain relationships that were very difficult for me to maintain if I wanted to stay in that place. It was just a lot that was necessary to bring in. So I think, it goes back to it's kind of the inverse of the conversation we were having earlier, where about passion, that lights up something, and when it's nurtured and nurtured and nurtured, then good things will come from it. And sexuality, when it's depleted and depleted further and depleted further, or we don't have enough energy inside us to protect, that also falls apart. But the other side that has to be spoken about is some people shut it down completely. Yeah. Which is a different, I don't know if we spoke about it in our last discussion.
I don't think so.
Like sexual anorexia, or, it's almost we divorce ourselves from the whole... From the whole chapter.
Maybe we touched on it with like the problem with SA.
A little bit, yeah. No, and I've gone through phases of that in my recovery. Really, before plant medicine, I didn't realize
the power.
I didn't realize that I was there in some regard. Like I'd shut off a lot of it just because it was too powerful to.
Right.
Yeah, the book. It's a crass example, but the book. Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill.
Yeah.
So he has a whole chapter on sexual transmutation, and he spoke about how wealthy people he knew would, sometimes they'd have an attractive secretary or something in order to keep
them alive.
Keep them alive. Not
right.
Not for it to go there.
I get it.
Not for it to go there, but in order for the energy to be built and to harness that energy in a positive direction, because the sexual energy is a creative energy. I'm not saying that's good advice.
Right.
I wouldn't do it myself.
Right.
But the concept.
That actually would come up for me.
I think a 1930s attractive secretary is different than a 2024 attractive secretary. Right?
No, but that actually that comes up for me. Like I'm very into like if there's like a sexual energy in me, like stop and like invite it in. Like what's going on? Like why? Like there's obviously a message for me here. Instead of running away from it, like often it's like, Remy, you're shut down sexually. Like you need to wake yourself back up. Like you've gone too much. Like you've gone too much into like abstinence mindset.
Right.
And it's like which you dry out. Like you're.
So explain that a little bit. Make it practical, because it's.
We spoke about this briefly. Like I'm very into if I'm triggered sexually, like I need like instead of that didn't happen, let me just move on, let's keep going, let me stay busy, which for many years that's what I was doing. And ultimately it catches up to you. It's like how long could you run, or even if it doesn't catch up to you, it's not, it's you're living this lifestyle of running away. Kind of like in meditation, like they say, like when a thought comes, don't ignore the thought. Like just invite it in gently, like, okay, right, thank you very much. And let me try, focus on my breath again. Like, whereas like when you're going to try and battle a thought, it's just going to
make it more.
Whatever, keep coming back. And so like often, I think on last podcast, I gave a couple different examples of like what I'll do with.
Right, but that's a little different than saying I'm in the abstinence mindset.
No. So like often it's like, okay, this is a message to me to like, okay, like you're a sexual being. You need to wake up your sexuality more.
Oh, you're saying sometimes that could be the message.
Yeah, focus obviously on your intimate relationship.
Have you come across I saw this, you're familiar with David Data at all?
No.
The Way of the Superior Man?
Yeah, I've seen the book. We have it at the Morehouse, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating guy. And his book, The Way of the Superior Man, he has a number of books, but The Way of the Superior Man, like each chapter could be a book.
Right.
And I think it was in his book, so towards the end of it, he talks a lot about sexuality and, his way of viewing it and relating to it. And he talks about how, like, different ages, the frequency of, even within a marriage, even within a relationship and things like that, but the frequency of ejaculation and how it plays into our ability to maintain high sexual energies, right? So, for example, as a teenager in young 20s, someone's sexual 3 or 4 times a week, could be fine. But I think like at the age of 40, right, where I'm getting, I think he recommends once a week for the average person, and by 50s, once every 2 weeks, and I think by 60s, once a month. But that it doesn't mean to be sexual. Then it doesn't mean only to be sexual, but to only release that often. Right, which is an interesting, but certainly when I came across that, and there is a whole movement now, like semen retention and everything else, which is very interesting to approach these topics today in a much more receptive way than I viewed them in a lens, when I first heard them in halacha. That could just be age-related, or it could be a bunch of years in recovery. Whatever it is, that's allowed me to hear these concepts in very different ways. And also, it's not shared like David Data doesn't share like it's a halacha,
Right.
It becomes a little more
palatable.
Palatable. But interesting ideas for sure, interesting concepts, and I think connected to this idea of keeping the sexual energy alive. And the last little bit I've shared that like an area of focus for me has been my marriage.
Right.
So I haven't spoken too much about it because I'm working on it. So I don't speak too much about it while I'm trying to figure out this thing. Just like I didn't talk too much about porn while I was working on that, or even when I first started with medicine, I didn't talk too much about that. So anyway, I've been trying to learn different things about marriage. It's a very interesting,
tough topic.
It's a very interesting arena. I don't know what to say. Yeah. It's a fascinating,
beautiful topic.
Fascinating playground. But something there that I came across, like in that domain, is that, especially as you start going into it, a lot of like masculine, feminine dynamics come up. And what I've heard said, there are different lenses for problems in relationships, but that one way to view the problems in marriages is through the lens of masculine and feminine dynamics. And when they get off a little bit, where the woman has to become more the leader, she's setting the tone, and the man is becoming more like a boy, then it throws off the dynamics, and also relationship problems come into play. And the same is true that's very connected to, let's say, who controls the sexual relationship, right? If the man is too eager to force sex in the relationship, and the woman can dictate the pace of the relationship or control the relationship because she controls the sexual, dynamic. Even though on paper we're following everything,
right,
that itself can become somewhat dangerous for the relationship.
Right.
Anyway, so one way I've thought of this, because connected to this concept I shared earlier about having sex, because I said having sex multiple times a week, but not necessarily releasing multiple times a week. Like that, from a masculine feminine dynamic, the message that sends about the level of control that a man has is very, first, it's very powerful. Very, and it's also it's very masculine, very powerful, and very, I think, attractive to a woman. Like it really sets a dynamic in such a way, like I can participate in this, right, possibly for a long time, and it's not going to end because I do. And I think that wakes up a certain kind of sexuality in a way that's not quite as problematic as a attractive secretary.
Right. Definitely. Yeah.
Because I thought of how that would jive, like how the concept would jive of, let's say, a man in his 60s only releasing once a month. I don't think he's suggesting to have sex once a month, to be sexual with their wife once a month, but there's a way to combine the two. And I think it's very powerful and sets a certain message in the relationship, and I think would create a tremendous amount of masculine power dynamic in a good, healthy way.
Yeah.
Because certainly if a woman loses respect for a man there, like in that setting, it does play into the whole relationship. If the woman gets a sense that because the man is very hungry for sexuality, she can control the dynamic of the relationship, then that will play through all areas of the relationship, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a big topic.
Very big topic.
And
so I said that it is an infinite. It is like really sexuality is infinite, because like what does it mean as one goes deeper and deeper into it? To go to the place of full abstinence.
Yeah, and I feel like it's so important in this conversation because, like, healthy sexuality, like, is very far from abstinence. Like, I mean, like, growing into your power is, you want to be extremely sexual and very much alive, and it's two sides of the coin.
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't make for a very happy wife. I mean, that's right. Like halachically, that's one of, I think in the Ksuva, it's one of the things we write, that a man is going to please his wife sexually. It's one of the requirements. And going complete abstinence is not
right.
It's not super ideal. And I know it's something that happens a lot in recovery. It happened to me in recovery, where I went to this place of feeling like I'm doing amazing in recovery. My wife didn't think so. I'm like, oh, I'm healthy sexually. I don't even think about it anymore. You know, I put it in a dungeon. I locked it, 7 padlocks. I was afraid of this whole conversation. So it felt like I was progressing, but in fact, there was another problem that was emerging on the other side. So I think that dynamic, which is one that's constantly evolving and we're constantly working on, meaning it's meeting us at different places of our life, is how is it fully alive without taking over us?
Right. I don't know if you could work on that part of your marriage and that part of your sex life so long as you're leaking sexually. Like,
yeah, it depends who we're talking to.
I think almost like it's in stages. It's like stage number 1 is really clean up your act. Like, and then stage number 2 is how to build a strong, healthy sex life between you and your wife. Because it's almost like it's 2 completely separate domains. Like even though like one is ultimately the cure, and like in order to, I don't know.
No, I agree with you. It depends, meaning even like this podcast, right? It depends who we're talking to.
Right.
And I think that's often why sexuality was something that was discussed privately.
Right.
But now it's not discussed privately anymore, right? Meaning it's not because of us. I'm saying it's all over.
Right.
You're getting sexual education wherever you go. You can barely watch a movie without seeing without seeing sex, which means it's teaching you something in some way about sexuality, you know, just through the relationship. But there's something going on, right?
Yeah.
There's some messaging, there's some education that's happening there. So now it's public, so now we're talking about it. But some of these kind of topics,
I think this is probably one of the biggest vacancies in our frum system, is there's no like frum sex teachers. I mean, chassan teachers, not to talk about it, like chassan teachers basically assume that the boy knows everything about sex, and we just need to teach him a couple of things that he's not allowed to do. Like you have this big master. Okay, now halachically, there's a couple of things that you're not supposed to do, and that's what chassan classes are. Not that it's a chassan teacher's job to go and educate, people about how to be a true man in a relationship and strong, healthy sexual relationship. But like, there's a very big void that it's not being taught, and there are some. I mean, you've recommended some really good teachers to me personally,
right?
And I found them to be life-changing. Yeah, I don't know where to go. I don't feel comfortable enough discussing it. So it's also something very intimate, and it's like, but it's a huge piece in the puzzle that like that like the reward for abstinence is the most powerful, deep, sacred, intimate relationship. That's what's on the other side. It's like,
and a sexual relationship too.
It's deep sexual relationship. It's like fast food, potato chips, jelly beans, hamburgers, or the most delicious, exquisite meal. And it's one or the other. And
right, and it's not eating nothing.
And it's not eating nothing. It's not fasting.
Right, that is a path, but that's not a path. Like, for example, this is where medicine helped me a lot, is even though I wasn't an SAA, right? I wasn't an SA, and I was working within a program that didn't have quite as strict messaging around it. And you were able to define your sobriety with your sponsor, and there was a lot more flexibility there. Nevertheless, I still saw a big danger sign around my sexuality.
Yeah, I don't think SAA is much better than that. I don't think in any of the S programs is there like a strong focus on healthy sex.
Well, right, and it's also the timing, like you mentioned in the last podcast, the timing that we're going to introduce these concepts to someone, because in the last podcast, you mentioned it like as an emergency room, right? These programs at the end of the day are an emergency room, and that's why some of these messages could, if it hits someone at the wrong time, it actually could be unhealthy for them and damaging for them, right? So a lot of it has to be met with the person at the right time. It's unfortunate that this is the only way to do it, because there's already so much poor education to not say anything. Then you're letting someone stumble in the dark with nothing. But it's something that needs to be inspected and worked on and improved upon constantly.
It's laughable to think about someone coming in who's like heavily addicted, and all of a sudden you have to start teaching him about healthy sex, and like the next morning he's Mr. Professional in healthy sex. Like that's part of the process. It's like there needs to be a process of abstinence almost, of just like of cleaning up, of almost recognizing. Like a lot of like healthy sex comes from a very strong sense of self. And like living in your own power, living in your own energy, and having what to give over. And addiction, or I almost don't want to call it addiction, because I feel like it's something everyone struggles with.
Right. I don't like the term sex addict either for these purposes, because this is something that everyone
call it like swimming in sexual energy. It's like people who are not. Have no discernment. I liked your podcast with Zach. You talk about discernment. It's like when there's no discernment, what's my energy? What's my wife's energy? What's foreign energy? It's like you're just swimming in arousal, and you don't know what the arousal is from. Is it a genuine arousal that's coming from a need to be intimate, a need to procreate, a need to get in touch with your life force, or is it just low vibrational arousal that you're picking up from the street? And it's like, and until like you go through the process of like defining who you are, what's your energy, it's very hard to like, okay, now be in your full power and be a full masculine man and show up and please your wife and be able to be, make deep eye contact. Like you can't even make eye contact with yourself. Like how could you make eye contact with your wife? And it's like, once like you could make eye contact with yourself, so to say, it's like then there's the the tremendous reward that's
the possibility that exists there.
To live in like a real union, a real bond, a real.
Right. What I did want to share connected to that was the first few years I was in recovery. Let's say I was in there for a while, and at this point, several years of sobriety, and I was in a relationship, and I did have a couple of kids, right? So I wasn't fully abstinent. But once I started working with medicines, it showed me how afraid I was of my sexuality. And I was allowing, come out now for a little bit, but overall, the sexual energy, I was really pushing to the side as much as I possibly could while still being able to procreate. And medicine showed me how to interact without being afraid of it, without being overwhelmed by it. And my wife told me afterwards, she said, I was afraid to say anything because I don't want to mess with your
masculinity,
with your recovery. I didn't, what is, what isn't.
Right. And
as a result, she said, but I felt like something was off, like there was something a little dead inside. Right. There was something a little dead. There was something missing in some way, but I didn't want to say it. But now that you're bringing it up, I can tell you that, that was a feeling that I had. And that's why it is important with all of these things is the recognition that this is not only for addicts. The addict has the luxury of being forced to reflect on these subjects.
Right.
In the same way someone who became so unhealthy that they were forced to understand how important it is the food they put in their body.
Right.
But it's important for everyone.
Right.
It's okay. This guy got 100 pounds.
Right. If you have diabetes, you have to, you're constantly monitoring how
Correct.
much sugar you're putting in.
Correct. So it's not, this guy's a food addict, so food is important for him. No, food is important for everyone. And I think in this conversation also pulling it back to sexuality being an important topic for all of us. We all wrestle. It's something, it's a thing, it's an entity we're constantly wrestling with and figuring it out. When we talk about these concepts of Avodah Zarah, I don't think they're talking about, Avodah
Zarah anymore. I think it's sex.
Yes. And
it's a real energy.
Sex and money.
Yeah, that's crazy.
The two big ones, sex and money.
Yeah, for sure. It's like I'm like reading like in Tanakh, just like the Jews like constantly stumbling with Avodah Zarah. Like Shleim HaMelech, Chacham Mikol Adam.
Right.
I mean, at the end of his life, his wives were all serving Avodah Zarah.
Yes.
It's like today I can understand it in the terms of sex. And it's like I remember my first couple journeys, the only thing I asked is like, what am I looking for in women? What am I looking for? God, what am I looking for? Like I've got many different messages, different times, but I remember there's this one journey where it's like, Avrami, drop the shame. It's literally your body is just a host to foreign energies. Like they're battling themselves out in you. It's almost like these energies just need a host, a stadium, an arena to fight it out. And like you're inviting them in to fight it out in you. And like, in a way, it really helped me let go of the shame because like I'm not a creep. It's not personal, but like it also let me know like I don't have to allow them in. Like this, this arena is closed for business, or like this arena is
my domain.
It's a domain. We're gonna bring terror into here. We're gonna bring great energy into here. So like, just understanding what we're swimming in. Like we're literally swimming in. People are pushing out energies, and they're coming into us. And
so, how would you explain it as Avodah Zarah? Someone who's
first of all, I'm using Avodah Zarah is a very extreme term, but it's an energy, it's a force.
Yes,
it's a power we're grappling with. Money's also it's a power. There's a pull. It steals our consciousness. We could be a complete servant to it. We could be drunk around money. We could be drunk around sex. It completely take us over.
Are you familiar with Patrick Carnes?
Sure.
So he has a book, The Gentle Path Through the 12 Steps. I think it's that book. And in it, he shares like kind of why the 12 steps are a framework that helps one
heal.
And like, what is it helping us heal exactly? I don't remember if it's in that book or another book of his, Out of the Shadows, but in one of those books, he kind of breaks down the belief of every addict. And I think he talks about 4 beliefs that every addict has. I'm not going to go through all 4 now, one, because it's not relevant, and 2, because I'm not sure I remember each one. But one belief that he talks about is that whatever the addiction is the belief is that is my most important need. So if someone's addicted to sex is my most important need. If someone is addicted to alcohol is my most important need. So when we look at it in that way, essentially what someone is saying is, I don't know what today's going to bring. I don't know what today's going to bring. When I say I don't know what today's going to bring, not externally, sure, externally also, but the question is, how does that affect me internally? So I don't know what roller coaster I'll be on, but what I do know is that if I have a bottle of alcohol,
I'll be okay.
On hand, I'll be okay. Whether I have to drink it or not is irrelevant.
Right.
For many people, we don't need to drink our addiction in order for it to give us security. We just know that if the times ever get, if the feelings ever get too tough to handle inside, then we can go to that addiction. It's there, it's available to us. So in that way, when we say that something is our most important need, then it's hard not to view that as Avodah Zarah. It's hard not to understand that through the lens of Avodah Zarah. We're worshiping it in some way.
Yeah.
Say, this is going to deliver.
Yeah, this is a source of my energy. This is a source of my comfort. This is a source of my security. This is what I need, and...
Okay, so I want to go into...
Just to close this off, to loop it up, it's like, when you have that, could you not understand why you can't find God to be the source of your energy?
Right.
It's like, we're talking about, like, you cannot... tshuva, like, anyone who's like, if sex is their life force, sex is what gives them comfort, sex is what they turn to when they're happy or sad, like, where does God fit in the picture? Where does he fit in the equation? You can't, like... you can't casually have God on the side. You're obviously you're just doing it. You're not there. Your heart's not there.
Right. What is interesting is the way it trips up so many, the way it trips up so many people. It's kind of fascinating.
Insidious, very sneaky.
Yeah, everyone. And since time immemorial. I mean, when you talk about biblically, right, when it talks about a society which is decaying, it's always talking about sexual promiscuity, sexual immorality, last week was Parshas Noach, right? One of the descriptions of why the generation was so, was deserving, but deserving of being flooded, was that there was rampant sexual immorality. People with animals, people with their kids. It was just, everything went. So it's just interesting that we've been stumbling on this for a very long time. And then the other side of it, the thought that it cannot be completely squashed. Practically, we understand why it can't be completely squashed, because you won't have another kid, right? We actually won't survive. But it's a very interesting... It's very telling, meaning in terms of the importance of getting this right. On the one hand, we physically won't survive if we don't have it. As a people, as a species, we won't survive. That we won't procreate, we won't move. But we can get completely dominated by it and overwhelmed by it. So whatever it is super important that we use it correctly and not incorrectly. And I'm not sure that I know what it is yet. Like, what is it? But it seems very like nuclear.
Yeah.
So let's talk, before we go to, I want to touch on money a little bit, because I think it's an important conversation to have as well, because it's another energy that a lot of us dance with and struggle with and overwhelm us.
We titled the podcast Sex and Money. We get a lot of hits.
I once said that with Chase Taub. We talk on something, he's like, we can title it Sex and Money.
Rock and roll.
Anyway, so but it's important as well, and I think the purpose of this conversation is more for the non-addict. I'm not talking to the person we had that conversation, for the person who's really struggling and the extreme shame and everything else, but here we're talking about, I think, the everyday person struggling with an energy that overwhelms many of us in different ways. And make no mistake, if someone feels okay with their sexuality, but their wife is not pleased sexually, then their sexuality is not good. Right? They're not in a good place with their sexuality, right? Yeah. That dance is meant to be there for the both of us.
Yeah.
So, oh no, I'm good. So anyway, so just for the common man, that it's something that definitely warrants and needs attention. But what I did want to talk about, you said many, many people calling you.
Yeah.
Okay, so you spoke about one aspect of it is that these people are calling you oftentimes just need to get something off their chest. But is there more? Is there more? Is there a certain theme? Are there certain kind of questions that are coming up regularly? Are there certain ideas that you're sharing with?
You know, it's funny. Like a lot of people are like, it's funny because it's on topic. A lot of people are like grappling with like, am I an addict or am I not an addict? I feel like I still grapple with that question. You know, like, am I an addict? Maybe I'm not an addict. And I don't know. What do I answer? Like, it's not about addiction. This is about about your life force. like I have people like, spoke to my therapist. I said, let's say I watch porn and masturbate 2 or 3 times a week. He said, I'm not an addict. I'm not considered an addict. Like, probably because your therapist is also watching porn 2 or 3 times a week. Right. And he decided that he's not an addict. But I feel like a lot of people, like everyone's like just checking in, like, this is what I do. Is it normal? Is it not normal? Do I need to take extreme measures to get help? Like, I feel like that's a very common theme.
It's funny. I did, remember when I used to do these podcasts, they were like short ideas, So one of them, I think I titled, Am I an Addict? Because a lot of people would give me that question, am I an addict?
Yeah. And
I guess tell people, you know what you do? I don't remember what I said to people, but now if I got the question, I think I would say, so if you're not, just stop.
No, it's not about stop. Like they know they can't stop. That's but it's more like I like when I was like in recovery, I had a different language, like which I would say my language was that was like very much my language. Like I think that's what Bill says, and like right in the beginning, you know, he would go into a bar and see, you know, to have a drink, and if you could walk out after one drink, then you're good. It's more like I think like what we spoke about was like, and it shocked certain people, is like the ramifications it's having on their life, like how deeply it's really impacting their growth. And like, it's not just one issue I'll deal with, you know, once I get the rest of my life in order, I'm going to focus. And once I'm making enough money, and once, you know, I have a normal relationship with my wife, then I got to start working on my sex. It's like, no. You're not making enough money because your sex life is a mess. You're not happy about, you know, you're completely dead in your Judaism because your sex life is a mess. You know, your marriage sucks because it's the bedrock of everything. And like, it's hard to hear. And I feel like people are like confirming, does that mean that?
I hear you.
I don't know. And I usually just double down.
But when I say to stop, right, it's saying the same thing, because you're saying if you stop, then if you can't, then I don't know a better definition of addiction than that. I can't stop when I want to. And if you could, then you'll find out exactly what your life is like without it. I remember it was a number of years ago, someone called me and he was like very, very, very depressed. Very depressed. This was early days of recovery for me. What? No, he wasn't. He had other reasons to be depressed. We weren't talking about porn addiction. He had like other things going on in his life. His parents were going through a lot. He had a sister who was struggling with very serious health issues. His whole life got kind of turned upside down. His father living in one country, mother living in another. One of them taking care of the kids, another one dealing with business issues. Just all sorts of problems. And he mentioned he was depressed, and, you know, not feeling so social, not even wanting to go out and do things. Just I said, do you watch porn occasionally? Do you feel like you have a problem with it? No. I said, no, I don't. He said, oh, why don't you try stopping? See, see what happens, And he shared how after a short time, 30 days or 45 days, his life was different.
Yeah.
It was different. It's like, oh, that depression that he connected to all of these very good reasons to be depressed suddenly lifted. And there was a lot more energy to do other things. But I think that the concept of this not being an issue of addiction, like the language becomes very dangerous because someone says, if I'm not there, then everything is okay. We're not talking religion. I think one of the things people miss about, let me ask you the question this way. If you were to fall back into addiction, what punishment do you think you would get for it?
I mean, the addiction is the biggest punishment.
Exactly. Right.
I mean, there's no bigger punishment than that.
Yeah, someone's going to take away your money. Someone's going to, the addiction is itself the biggest punishment. Yeah. And that's, I think it's one of the things that...
I mean.
Right. We miss the point. We think that when you're saying that, someone is going to not, their business isn't doing as well, or the relationship is not doing as well because of pornography, we're suggesting some sort of
spiritual
punishment.
Right, exactly.
They're two disconnected things.
God's upset at you, and you're not, and your business is failing because.
Right. The punishment suggests that there's two totally different realities. You didn't do your homework, so you're not getting a lollipop.
Yeah.
Right. So those two different realities, but this is not that. This is one and the same thing. You didn't sleep well at night, so you're tired the next day. You didn't get a punishment for it. What is the punishment for not sleeping well at night? Is being tired. It's not a punishment. It's part and parcel of the reality of it. And that's what I think is so important about this conversation around sex for the average person. Yeah. And it's all of us, me, you included, it's this infinite thing. It's an infinite subject and especially when we're sharing it with another person, it's an infinite subject to improve on constantly.
I touched on this a little bit, but last time, it's all about yichud, really. It's all about unity with God, and it's infinite. It's an infinite unity. My wife's been on this for a little while. Essentially, as paganism dropped, similarly, the concept of being married to one woman became more prevalent, and paganism is many wives, many gods. And our unity with our wife,
interesting,
somewhat represents this monotheism. I'm going on a whim,
right?
But there's something there. There's something learning how to be intimate with your wife is learning how to be intimate with God. And and there's infinite amounts. There's infinite levels in yichud. It doesn't end. Even similarly in deep intimacy with our wife, it's there's so many levels, and when we're taking in other women, other energies, in a certain sense we're possessed by other foreign energies that are operating within us,
right?
And you're not successful because you're not in your power, you don't have access to yourself. I don't know. Maybe I sound spooky, but that's how I felt in addiction. In retrospect, it's I had no access to myself. I had access to other people's feelings, other people's, it was all about what's going on around. And there was no internal compass.
Yeah, it's like paying the mob for security. So you pay the mob and they give you a little bit of security, but then who you're really scared of
is the mob.
Is the mob. And you better make your next payment.
Right.
So it's do you have security? Yeah, up until the next time they show up and ask for the payment. Right? So if your security comes through paying the mob,
right,
then you'll be forced to make a lot of payments to the mob, so to speak. And it's kind of the same thing with with addiction. I had a friend in recovery who he was married, he was employed, and someone chatted with him on the internet, and he shared some pictures back and forth, naked pictures of himself, and then whoever this was on the other end started blackmailing him, saying, here's your employer, here's your wife. Like, he had all of his information. So if you don't want me to send our communication, then I want $500, let's say. So he sent $500, right? And he felt good for a day. And the next day, like, okay, by the way, I need another 500. I need another 1,000. After the third request, it's never going to end. I'm going to keep paying. The only thing I can do is I'm going to stop and then hope everything goes okay, you know? And that's, it kind of, for me, is a metaphor for this, you know, for addiction.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's the same play is happening. Saying, I feel like crap. And it's like, okay, so go watch this porn video or have this sexual experience. It's okay. Do it. So you feel good, you do. You feel good for a little bit of time, and then suddenly could be next couple hours or the next morning, and it's okay, I want more. You know, and that's what it is to serve one of these.
Yeah, that's a very good metaphor.
Yeah, we're getting our security, we're getting our safety, we're getting our love, we're getting our energy. So whatever the energy is that we're looking for.
You're really you're really negotiating.
Like,
you're negotiating with something else.
Yeah. And then eventually it just demands more and more money and
more time and more.
Yeah, more and more money for less and less time. Yeah. I remember towards the end, like when some of the thoughts would come to my head, I'd argue out loud with it. Like towards the end of like the real struggle with pornography, it's come in my head and I'm like, just stop. If it was gonna do anything for me, it would have already done it, because how many times have I been there? Like, well, what's gonna happen again? Like, stop! You're just lying to me at this point.
Right.
You're just lying to me that you're promising me a relief that's, you know, momentary at best. Like, well, what's going on? I've done this, and here I am again, wanting it again. I didn't, and I want it more. I need to find something new. This is crazy, and that's what it's like.
Yeah, I'll say another thing. Another thing, a lot of people like. I feel like why people reach out to me is like they're very like I shared a lot of like Torah ways of approaching it. Like first of all, a lot of people like want to find like if they're afraid to go to SA or something, like they want to find like a cure within Torah, and like they want to like they're looking for like just like a cleaner, more familiar way of healing. And like that's why they're like someone reaching out, and like I don't know, like not that there's a cleaner way, but like I am very passionate that like I've had these like arguments with people in recovery that are like it's almost like church and state, you know? This is recovery, even like very from people, but like Torah is given for healthy people, and recovery is for sick people. You know? Yeah, every halach in the Torah is right, but this is sick people. Torah doesn't talk about cancer patients, and we're cancer patients, and
right.
And it's like, to me, first of all, Torah does talk about cancer patients. You know? Torah talks about everything. And it's like, there is real answers in our tradition. Like, there were people who really struggled with this stuff, and the problem is that, like, when we're in... The Torah is very spiritual. Like the answer is very spiritual, even in recovery too. But like you just have a lot of very physical people telling you like you got it. There's a spiritual solution, so you come to trust them more. And it's like you can't get healing while we're like your heart is not going to be open to the messages of Torah. Like right now, the messages of Torah to me are so powerful. Every pasuk, I don't even have to go into like chassidus. Like every pasuk could be like so powerful, right? Like so much depth and like conveying such deep struggle. Tehillim, for example, full of it. You know what I mean? It's almost like
I was just thinking about one as you were saying.
What? Yeah, like
I shared it with you.
Go ahead.
But it's possible to tell him Shalach Yada B'Shleimov.
Yeah.
Right, and that concept of Shalach Yada B'Shleimov, Chila Brisai.
Right.
Which talks about, right?
Literally.
It's basically linking those two words.
Yeah.
That Shleimov, our completion, is Brisai.
Right.
And if one is affected, the other is affected.
Yeah, I mean, that's like overtly. But like even, I was sharing it on Sukkot. My brother Srali shared this with me. Just like in in Hallel, it's very powerful. Like first, it's every single pasuk. So like this is one thing that's coming to me. Like right at the end of Hallel, it says we say Oitcha Hashem ki anisani v'atihi li lishua. I praise you, Hashem. Anisani could mean you answered me, but it could also mean like you pained me. Oitcha, I'm going to praise you because you pained me. Right? So all of a sudden, there's like a whole new way of looking at our struggle. Like you're thanking God for the struggle. And then it says, Even mas rabainim haisel reish pina. The rock that the builders scoffed, the builders were disgusted by, ultimately became the reish pina, became the cornerstone. And only once this happens, we say, Me'is Hashem haizazayis hinefleis beinenu. Like once you realize that the pain you're going to praise God for. The rock that the builder scoffed. Like everyone, like you thought your addiction, your source of your pain was like, was the pit. All of a sudden, so then you say, Me'ez Hashem, this must be God's plan. Like he puts me through these struggles all to build me up. And then the next pasuk after that is Zeh Yom Hashem Nagilav Nesbechavai. So like all of a sudden we could live in the now. Zeh Yom Hashem, this is a day God made, let us rejoice in it. Because we realize that every struggle that comes our way is essentially, like even the darkest moments is really essentially to build me. It may be Masu Abainim, the builders are scoffing it, but that is going to be the cornerstone. But I don't know why that just came to me, but literally every single pasuk is full of this stuff. It's just like we're not like, so long as we're in addiction, like we're not available to any of these messages. It's like you were saying, you belong to the mob. It's almost like I'm going to give you pleasure. All your rationale will come from me. All your thinking is going to come from me. And everything that's not giving you this specific chemical hit is irrelevant. And like it takes a lot of, it's simply, you need to detox. You need to detox and you need to surround yourself with people who you could talk honestly with for a little bit. That's why meetings are amazing. You know, you need people you could rationalize with, you could talk to, you could get honest with. And like all of a sudden, everything is just like, every pasuk is talking about this struggle.
So bring this back to where you started this off. You said that people were calling you and you feel like they connected to the fact that...
like I found a lot of strength in Torah. Like there was a lot of references to like a lot of my healing has come through, psukim or ideas.
But that's more now, right?
It's much more now. Like wasn't available to me. We spoke about this on Sukkot, about my journey with Torah. But
right, and the reason why I say that's now is because I think it's important that when someone says, when I hear it, all my alarm bells go off, is to say that, I'm ready to heal. I want it.
It's not up there.
But suddenly they have opinions. I'm like, come on.
Right.
Come on. You're literally watching porn.
Yeah. It's like, here's the best. I was just talking. It's like, it's talking to someone about meetings. Like, yeah, but it's in a church. I'm like, do you understand? Your bedroom is a church. You know what I'm saying? You're in the church right now. Right. You know what I'm saying? Get up and go to church basement. Like it's a lot holier than your bedroom.
Yes. Yeah. There are many examples of this, but it's like if we understand where we are, and the only way to understand where we are is to really understand where we could be. I'm sure you've seen that meme. It says, hell. What hell is seeing the potential of who he could have been.
Right.
Right. Then we get a glimpse of that person, and that gap is our hell, right? The more it is. So when someone's sitting there and, living with anxiety, living without passion, living with depressed, is it so bad? Like in that place, is it so bad? Yes. When we compare it to what's possible, yes, it's so bad. It's really freaking bad. It's terrible. And we start dancing around, Chassidus is supposed to answer everything. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I like what you said. I've heard this part from you about what AJ Tversky.
Yes.
That and people used to ask him, why does he send people to, AA
meetings?
Yeah, why not? Like everything he could learn, Chassidus, all different things, Musar. He said if people at were learning Mussar or Chassidus, like their life depended on it, I'd send them there.
Yeah,
I think that's very true.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, read it with that kind of intensity, and we'll get somewhere. Any of those things, you know. I mentioned Tamid Dvar either. You just take that one book and read it with level of intensity. So powerful. You know, it'll change your whole life for sure. There's no question. If you take this thing serious, every single part of it, and take it seriously, and say, I'm going to practice, I'm going to emulate God in this way, you're done. Your work is good. You know, you can take any one of these, but the fact of the matter is that for many of us, that's been available to us. That's been available. I was having a conversation with a family member recently about, it was a few of us, our family, some of us who've done plant medicine, some were very against it. And
true Jewish family.
Yeah.
Some very pro, some very against. Yeah.
And one of the ones who was for it said, do you see a benefit in me since then? Do you see a benefit? Like, I don't know, maybe, yeah, there's some things that are better, some things I'm not so sure, but even so, if it's not proper, then what are you telling me about benefits? You know, I don't care. Like, if it's not proper to do, then the benefits aren't so relevant. Anyway, I said, and I said, you have all these things, Chassidus, you have all these things in Torah. I said, I agree with you, and now I'm finding that, and now I'm starting to see that, and I'm reading more and more Jewish books than I am Gabor Mate and David Data and all these other things. But I got a lot from that. I said, the way I see it is at all of these, I was swimming in all the messages of the Torah. I had all of the words, the language, the familiarity, whatever it was, right? I had 20 years in yeshiva, 25 years in yeshiva with all these concepts all around me. I said, but there was like a glass between me and them. And what the medicines didn't do anything. I didn't get anything from the medicines itself. What the medicines did is they punctured this glass that was around me, and now it gave access to all this other information to suddenly be received by me.
Yeah.
And I think that's often what happens. So when someone calls you and says like they want it available through the Torah, certainly it's possible, but if it was going to happen, it would have. If you understand the extent of your problem you're in, you're not going to be worrying about church basements and 12 steps and where it comes from. Like, we're in a critical place. Unfortunately, because our tendency is to compare to other people as a way to determine how we are. So because of that, because so many of us are a mess, so we say, okay, we're okay, because we're comparing. But if we stood alone, like comparing us to ourselves, us to our potential, us to our capacity, we would understand that we're not in a good place. When someone's measuring and saying, like, I'm watching pornography a few times a week, like I went to my therapist and an addiction, you can only arrive at that conclusion because you're comparing to a lot of other people who are much worse. You can't arrive at that conclusion if you're comparing to who you could be. It's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, I feel like maybe I'm laughing at some of the people called. I want to, like...
At what?
I feel like I was, like, laughing at some concept of what people brought up. I want to take that back, just in the sense, like, anyone who reached out is tremendous amount of courage. And, like, tremendous amount of courage. Just to, like, to hear a podcast, to reach out to someone, it's literally the beginning of all healing. And I remember when I first started working with you, and like you were so freaking generous the time you spoke to me, and like hours. Like I think we used to meet once a week, and probably an hour and a half each time we would do a call, and like I'm so not that like I really enjoy talking to people on the phone. Like I'll spend probably, I don't know, a few hours, 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours a week just talking, and it's like we're all in the same Like I almost like when I'm backtracking, I feel like I'm like I was like maybe harsh on like laughable ideas, but they're all laughable because that was literally my thinking. Like all this thinking of, you know, a church basement being my room, like I was in that same place, like not realizing how.
Listen, most of these concepts are not our concepts, right? They're ideas that someone else put in our head.
Yeah.
You know, someone called me. It was interesting. So they came to Adama. They were working with Rosh Low afterwards, and because Rosh comes to Adama and he does like a couple hour class, right? At this point, like an hour and a half class, a teaser for someone to start identifying with their story a little bit. But then afterwards, certain people reach out to him and they really start working with him. So one of the guys did, and he did a speech with him recently in front of a group, 30 or 40 people. And I saw some of it, and he'd been through a lot, you know. But what was interesting in his story was it wasn't direct. It wasn't like he wasn't the one who suffered the worst pains directly. It was maybe his brother who was very sick, or his father went through so whatever else, right? But he was swimming in that, but he wasn't the. This is a different example, but let's say someone who had a sibling who attempted suicide, right? This wasn't the example of this case, but as an example. So they're not the one who suffered, but obviously they're not the one who suffered from the attempted suicide,
right.
But they struggled a lot themselves. Anyway, so I saw a speech, and a lot of it was just coming to terms with all the stuff that his family went through, having money at some point, finally getting into business problems, losing the money, just someone sick, just a lot of problems that he was around. And then he said separately, right? So I'd seen that speech, and separately from that, we're having a conversation, and he said that he's struggling, that he didn't go through. He's like, sometimes he wishes like he went through real abuse in life,
right.
And he feels like he didn't, and he can't quite put his finger on what's wrong with him as a result.
Yeah, I relate to that.
So, right. So I said, but you understand that's not, first of all, what you went through, because I heard his story. If I didn't hear his story, when I said what you went through was very extreme by anyone's standards. But you weren't the main person. Okay. You weren't the main one struggling in the story. I said, but that idea that you needed a bigger story to be worthy of compassion and care, that's not your idea. That's a message that was imposed on you.
Yeah.
Right? So
it's such a common problem, by the way.
Yes.
I feel like I struggled with it so much. So many people in like, especially in healing from like sex addiction, it's also like, my life isn't crazy enough to like warrant, you know, an intervention. So like, am I even worthy of healing?
Exactly.
You know, like it's like I'm not like, you come into some of these rooms and people have these crazy war stories. Like, oh, I'm not that bad. Like I'm such a loser. I'm not even worthy of being a loser. You know. It's like, yeah. Anyway, finish.
So what I said was, and this is the reason I brought it up, because it's similar to the last concept where it can sound like I'm mocking the idea, right? Because the idea is insane.
Right.
But it's not the person's idea.
Right.
So what happens? What I shared with him, I said, imagine this child. So let me give you a scenario. I'm not saying this exactly happened, but imagine this child growing up in a house, okay? And one child is going through terrible physical ailments. Another one is going through all sorts of emotional ups and downs, roller coaster, okay? And then this other kid, which is a good kid, right? So the parents are completely overwhelmed by
A and B.
This guy makes a peep. He may want a little more peanut butter on his sandwich, let's say. Oh, no, we have no room for you. We're already overwhelmed by the other two. So the messaging that this one gets is keep your head down. Keep your head down. Like, no. The other ones are the ones with the problems. You're my good kid. You're the one who doesn't get overwhelmed. Right. You're the one who doesn't overwhelm me. You're the one who doesn't create problems. You're the one who doesn't have issues. My point is that that's part of the trauma. That's what I'm trying to share. Like, this idea is part of the prison that you're in, is this idea that your pain is not worthy of care and concern.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a tangent, but the idea is like, that idea is a shitty idea. Objectively, it's a bad idea.
Right.
But it gets into us. How does it get into us? Not naturally. Someone put it on, and we can see how perfectly compassionate and reasonable parents who were just at their end with what they were struggling with needed to put it on this child just in order to keep him quiet so as not to get not to drown completely. And then later on in life, this is the idea that he can't seem to shake, but it's not his idea. And it's the same thing. No one arrives at a conclusion themselves that I have a solution, I have a problem, there's a solution in front of me, but I'm not going to take it because of some, I don't know, made up thing. It's in a church basement or somewhere else. That's an idea imposed by someone else that got into our, I don't know, our way of thinking, our way of talking. These are not our ideas. They're not good ideas. There are solutions in front of us, and you see it, and over. And this is, I think, this connects back to the passion thing. It's over and over what you find. You're finding it with me. You're finding it with you, with many others. People come back home. Trust them. Trust them to go out. Trust them to do what's best for them. Trust them to heal over and over. I'm like friggin' with a yarmulke here talking about sichas, for goodness sakes. Like that happened as a result of me going and taking chances with healing and taking chances with different ways. And eventually we come back home. We find things that light us up, and the more lights up, and suddenly we start coming back to all of these ideas that previously there was a big wall to us. Like, what is someone worried? What is someone worried about? You're going to go to a church basement, and suddenly then you're going to go to the main floor? Is that the concern?
No, I think the concern is that, like, the only thing that's keeping them functional is, like, that they're following halacha still. Like, besides for the ones they're not, like, they're...
But they're not.
I know, but I'll talk from my own story. Like, I was at, like, a certain point that, like, I kept Shabbos because, like, I knew if I didn't, like, there was no way... there was no way I would start again.
Okay.
You know, it's like anything I was doing was... just because, like, similar to with addiction, it's like, you know, like if I cross this boundary, like it's forever crossed, and then I have to fight the next boundary. You know, so it's like any boundaries you have in addiction is like, I'm just doing I'm holding it because let me stay within this arena, because the second this breaks, it's just the next one breaks and the next one breaks. And I feel like their Judaism is very functional. It's not spiritual, but it's functional. And like, if I start doing something, maybe everything's going to topple. You know, like if I break this boundary about, you know, halachically I shouldn't be going to a church, like, and somehow it's their lifestyle's making sense. Like my life, you know, there were rules, you know, there were methods in the madness.
Right.
And like, they don't want to break certain, I don't know, these rules that are holding them back, or like try introduce something that's not familiar. It's not about other people, but their own selves. Like, if I let loose, will I ever come back together? So many people about psychedelics will say the same thing. It's like, I don't want to open that Pandora's box. Like, will I ever stop crying? You know?
Right.
And I think it's similar. Like, I think it's like
and the fact, but that's exactly what we're saying. And the fact of the matter is that you will come back together. What I find
you'll cry it all out, and you'll let go of
and this isn't a blanket recommendation for anyone to go to recovery meetings, church basements, or do psychedelics. But it's the idea of that's why I think like intention matters so much. What is your intention in going there? Yeah. Intentions to heal. Your intentions to go better. Go.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. It also comes back to like we don't realize how strong the soul is. Like our soul is so powerful. It's huge. When we don't have access to it for so long, we don't realize how strong it is. So like eventually it's going to come out, it's going to light you on fire, and it's going to bring you to the right direction. But like when you're living off foreign
fumes,
energies, you're living on fumes. I don't know. I'll fall apart. The fumes will drop, and I'll be left with nothing.
Right. Yeah, this connects right back to this idea of passion. And we saw it, you know, with the shul in the House of More, right? We've had a very eclectic group of people come to the shul. Yeah. And many of them who were, you know, there was one guy, for example, I think Rosh Hashanah, I don't know if it was intentional or not intentional. I would imagine it was intentional. But the first day he was there, we kind of needed him for a minyan. So First day he was there, he didn't wear a yarmulke, right? And to me, it felt like a statement, right? He wasn't contemplated, like, I'll hear, minion.
One of the loveliest guys.
What? Yeah. I'll hear, meaning, I think from his standpoint, he's like, you guys need a minion, so I'm going to come to help you. I'm not coming because I want to be part of the minion. I'm not coming because I need to daven. I'm not coming because I want anything from it. But very quickly, he was lit up. And then during the Niggunim, and he starts singing and singing and dancing. And what's the journey that he's on, right? Yeah. The journey that he's on, that is, he's definitely crossed some of these boundaries in terms of finding healing, in terms of recovering his passion. Yeah. And lighting it up, and then slowly it comes around in some beautiful ways, and that's I think connecting to that idea of passion and joy is like trust it. Don't be so afraid of it that what it feels like. I'll tell you what it feels like. It felt like to me that the message was, we have the best product, but you got to trust me on it, and you can't taste the competitors.
Right.
Coke is the best, but Pepsi is forbidden. When I feel like the message could be is, we're comfortable with the best, and if you need to try something else, try and come back. Like, why do we have to be so afraid of it? It's like somewhere in that message of being afraid, I think, is the fear for some people that if they would go, they would never come back. Yeah. So they're telling us that if we went, we would never come back.
That's definitely the energy that's given over.
Yes, but now you're saying, like, what did you say? You said the sin for promiscuity is the sin itself. You don't have to give me another one. You don't have to threaten me with it. It scares you. I saw it, like your body tensed up. The thought of going back there. To me, when I think of that, it's like, I don't want to live numb anymore. I lived numb for so many years. I don't want to live numb anymore. Yeah. So the thought of going back there, for what? For momentary pleasure, so I live numb? No, thank you. No, thank you. I quite like this. This version of me that's a little bit more passionate.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay, interesting. Yeah, so certainly not mocking the person. I understood where you were going there. I don't think anyone would hear it that way, but I understand why you interjected that. But I do think that sometimes...
I also just wanted to put it out. I love these conversations. Like, right. they're meaningful to me. I feel alive after them, and they remind me of where I was. There's not one person who calls me that I don't relate to everything, on some level, everything they're going through. Yes. It's so relatable. I was there. I know the darkness. Sometimes I'm part of me is like, oh man, it's so far, he's so far from where he has to be. But then, I always remind myself that, if you're carrying 100 pounds and you take off 20 pounds, it's still life gets much better, and then you take off another 10 pounds and it's lighter and lighter. You may not be flying yet, but one step in the right direction already, there's so many positive changes in your life. And it's
yeah. I do want to say something on that, because I think it's a very important part when we're working with people. Is one of the things that's beautiful about the recovery model, which I think it also happens as a byproduct often in plant medicine, where people go very quickly from, I'm here to help, I'm here to be helped, and then I'm here to help. Right? And of course, to do it in a way, I don't know who I had this conversation. I think Yochi Retz and I spoke about this a fair amount, is making sure that we're not going to help too quickly. But, I think that as long as we're on the path, if you know Aleph, teach Aleph, but if you know Aleph, don't pretend you know the whole Aleph base. Right. Don't teach a whole Aleph base. So, keeping on the path of continuing to heal, while at the same point in time, sharing that with others, because I think what ends up happening is that what gets communicated in that process when we're helping the person is, I believe in you. I believe in you. Because we've been there, like you're saying, I was there and now I'm here, so I believe in you. I believe in the potential. Sometimes you can see what could be unlocked in someone. If only they felt confidence, if only they felt they felt their own power. It's wow, what's possible for this person? So we can see it for them. So what gets communicated to that person is this feeling of I believe in you. And that's what that really helps someone. Where other times when we're in a very top-down dynamic, a therapist and patient, I'm not saying this all therapists, but that kind of, the healer and the one who needs to be healed, it becomes, I pity you.
Right.
I pity you. So I really like some of these dynamics that end up coming at play in the 12-step model, which really injects not only 12-step model, like I said, but this idea that those who are coming for healing very quickly can turn that around. So you're saying these people are calling you, right? How long ago was it that I was calling someone?
Not long ago.
Right. And then how long was it that you were calling someone? And now how soon are you able to then field phone calls from someone else? It's such a beautiful dynamic. And through that.
Right.
And some people put it down as, where's the professional? We need a professional in the room. Like suddenly human beings can't help each other, Right. A professional and expert to understand how we're, spare me another professional.
The expert has a PhD, but is busy in the bathroom. Not to confuse compassion with pity, God forbid, because I feel like compassion is so...
Not pity, no.
No, I mean, compassion is so... It's also a big part of the like someone who understands me and gets my struggle and feels for my struggle, not to get lost in his problem, but there's empathy. I
think the word compassion comes from a combination. I heard this somewhere. I haven't researched it myself, but compassion comes from two words, compasión, which I think means to suffer with someone. So
wow,
and that works really well when we've been there.
Right.
When we've been there, it's like when you hear someone stuck in this paradigm of, the am I an addict? I was there. I sat there for weeks and weeks and weeks trying to figure out, am I an addict? Reading books on addiction. Do I qualify? Am I this?
Right.
What a useless waste of time to figure out the answer to this question. Look at the opportunity that was available to me, look at the opportunity that opened up for me to heal. And now where I am now, I see how much more there is to go. It's just the opposite. Right? The thought process when I said, if only I get from 2 times a week to 1 time, now I'm good. Now I'm like a normal person or whatever, the barometer might be. And it's like, no, you get to 0 times and you still feel like it's infinite.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about, I think, about money. I think it's important that we talk a little bit about money. That way we have good clickbait for the title of this this podcast. No, in all seriousness, I've been thinking a lot about just my own journey with it, and how in many ways it represents a much stronger, to go back to the word we used previously, a much stronger Avodah Zarah than sex. Certainly much more insidious, much more powerful, much more accepted. Did you see the discussion I had with Yochi?
It's parts of it. I didn't watch the whole thing.
Did you see it? There was a portion that I had just where I spoke about...
I saw about interest.
Interest and things like that.
Yeah.
So I've thought about... So I'll say it this way, right? So the healing I was forced to do in my relationship with sex has made me realize how much healing I've needed and need around my relationship with money. Meaning if one's not right, the other's not right. The other's not right either. And as I've worked on that, I've noticed how commonplace it is, and in many ways much more dangerous than sex. And I'll tell you why. Because sex is in the basement, If we want to serve this idol, we really have to climb to the bottom floor and do it alone. But the idol of money, we get to worship in groups. We get lauded for it. Everyone's doing it also. It's like, okay, let's all,
come to the house of worship and worship it together.
Exactly. And I think with Yochi, we touched on that a little bit, which I think was one aspect of it is, where we're playing a dangerous game with money. I focused on one aspect, interest, but we're playing a dangerous game with money, with the relationship, and then potential of being eaten alive. So I'm just curious in your own journey of this sensitivity.
First of all, it's a very big topic for me as well. Just anxiety, fear around it, need for validation in money, like it gives us security, it gives us validation, it gives us self-worth, it gives us purpose. I'm very into betachin. Like it's a big thing of mine. I give a shir on betachin every day, WhatsApp group. And like one of the things I remember, like I had this whole little journey around it. Like I remember, like I started it for a couple of years, maybe like a year and a half ago. Actually, it was like I had like a little recovery group with a couple of friends, and I started like, guys, let's learn about betachin. That's how it like started originally. And then like I stopped I had a journey. I remember, and like I realized like I'm using betachin, and this is something I struggle with, but I'm sure it's out there in the world too. It's almost like I trust God so that he'll bring me to the God of all gods, which is money. Like if you trust God enough, then he'll give you money. Like money is the ultimate security. Money is the ultimate energy, the ultimate like sense of strength. And if you only like trust him enough and like you really bow down to him, then he'll open the chambers to the God of money. And like I remember like I restarted this year like a couple months later, where it's like, we're not trusting God for money. I was able to I don't remember why I stopped. Maybe I started after a journey, like after I like had like a newfound passion around it, and it was like, oh, we just want God's energy. Like if we have Hashem, like we will have money. We will have like and money. I mean, it's like that would always say, it's like b'chalal masayim mana. Like within 200 is 100 also. Like don't worry. Like you're not gonna like you have God. You have everything. You'll have whatever money could get you. The security you want, you'll have it. The sense of self you want, you'll have it also. Strength, I feel like there is a lot of talk about betachin in the world, and it's actually beautiful. I feel like a lot of people are realizing. Right. A lot of people. There's a lot of focus on it. I do find that a lot of people are almost like, okay, how do I get money? Okay, I need betachin. Okay, I'll have betachin. Whatever you want me to do. If people, I heard a story, someone had betachin, he got money. I'll have betachin too. Hopefully, I'll get money.
Right. I got from a few different people, one a painting and one a picture of the Rebbe, and it had, I think, his famous letter of the Rebbe that became. I guess really popular. Don't worry about business, more betachin, more parnasa. So,
Yeah, but it's like that's what we want to lean into, and it's like it's so powerful. Today, I'll give an example. Today's shir, give a little blurb, but it was like he was talking about. I think it's the sixth chapter, the fifth or the sixth, I remember. But he goes through. Okay, so everyone has to engage with material world to make a living. So he goes through 7 differences between the Bala B'tachin, the one who trusts Hashem, the way he engages with money, and someone who doesn't trust. And I think today we learned, I think it was the 6th reason. And he says how someone who trusts Hashem loves all people and is loved by everybody. And like funnily, like he starts off, he says, people aren't afraid to have him around because they know he's not after their money or their wives. Interesting, this is 1,000 years ago already. This guy is like, he trusts Hashem. His source of energy comes from God. So his energy is like, you're not shopping. Like there's a certain energy that someone who's
feeding.
Who needs. Like, I don't want this guy around. He's looking at my business. He's seeing what I'm doing. Even if it's not that overt, but on a subtle level, he wants something from me. Yeah. He wants my money. So number 1, people like him around. And number 2, like he's very cool hanging around with everyone because like he likes people genuinely.
Because he doesn't need
anything from them. It's not in their hands to give them, and it's not in their hands to take away from them. So he's actually one of the most. It says, we say this in davening if it comes from Tehillim. Someone who trusts God, kindness will surround him. I never understood it this way. I thought like he'll get kindness, but it means like he'll just be engulfed with kindness because like he's such an easy guy to have around.
Right.
Whereas jealousy is like someone who's jealous. On the flip side, it's like someone who's jealous is someone who doesn't trust Hashem, in a subtle level, they're always, so their God is money, so there's always something that someone has that belongs to them. Like, if, in my jealous phases of life, like, if someone else made a lot of money, like, on some level, he took it from me.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, what just happened here? You know? Like,
right, meaning if your self-worth is coming from the fact that you have money, then suddenly you find out someone else has money. So what does that do to your self-worth? You're not so unique anymore.
Yeah, correct. And he has more money.
He has more now. Now you've gone down.
Yes. Like Warren Buffett says, every single day someone made more money than you. You know, even Warren Buffett. And any given day, there's someone in the world who made more money than him. You know what I mean? You can't make the most money every single day.
Right.
So it's like, so someone is always taking. A quote from Mishlei, I think it is. Okay, this is with something else. He says, the days of ani, whatever, the days of a poor man are just, so like, I forget the beginning of the pasuk. It's from Mishlei, but it's like someone who is poor, like he's poor in his betachin, he's just, his life sucks. Like, it's, even when he's doing well, he could have done better.
Right.
But toiv leiv, someone who trusts God, mishte tamed, it's one big festival. Life is a big party. Like, you're just feeding off of God constantly. But like, what I find is like the inverse. Like he like really clarifies. Like, you have he doesn't say this, but I've seen this in other places. You have Anochi Hashem Lekecha, the first one, and then Loisachmed is the last one, and like they're very interconnected. Like the Rambam talks about how, you know, if you have a bad middle, let's say you're very stingy, so you want to try and go to the opposite. You want to be very, you know, not generous, but you want to be very free with your money.
Right.
And so like, what's the inverse? What's the opposite of jealousy? The opposite of jealousy, like you want to go to the opposite side, like Yasev, Yeshanav, Yeshalash. You have to go to the opposite side. Where the opposite of jealousy is trust. Like you recognize.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Like, you're recognizing how whatever I have is exactly what I'm supposed to have. Yes. Whatever he has, exactly what he's supposed to have. And it's like, someone who's jealous, like, he's always in someone else's whatever, you know. Right. And then just to close it all up, it's like he's not a fun guy to have around because he quietly hates you. He wants what you have, so you don't want him around, and he doesn't have friends. He hates everybody, and he's hated by everybody.
Right. It's interesting in the example you gave that the person who's coming around, right? You don't. Or let's talk about it in the positive sense. The person who's trustworthy. Yeah. They're not after your money, not after your wife. Right. Which, going back to where we started this conversation of, it's that same energy, right, of sex and money. Yeah. Right. That in some way we're
same insatiable.
Right. The same insatiable need for more.
Yeah.
Right. That's why the parent organization of more.
In search for more.
In search for more is more to more, right? That we're going for more to eventually reach the light. Right. More to more. More and more. More and more. So, but yes, it definitely does have that that energy. But that's just, it's hapcha, right? That we convert something, like convert this part of me that was insatiable need for.
Yeah, these are
more towards a positive
sense. We're born with these traits, and that's our job. It's like, how do we
harness it and use it?
Yeah, I'm not like, I was very jealous at a certain point. I mean, like, it's almost like I probably would have been embarrassed to even say that. But like, I feel like in early recovery, that was like a big topic of mine. It was like character defects, like jealousy was like how do I deal with this animal? I'm even so embarrassed to even
say it.
To even say that I'm jealous. I'm like, I'm not here to say I'm clean, but like, it really is like, I think like as I develop a sense of self, know what I want, know who I am, like not engulfed with foreign powers in me, like, it's actually like nice to like, I had an interesting story.
No, it's true. Okay. Yeah.
I'll say quickly. Like, I remember hearing that like someone like sold their company for like a Chabad guy like sold their company for like a very like I don't know, a very very big number. And like it was a couple of years ago, and I was like, "Wow, that's so good." Like my initial reaction was like, "Wow, that's great. That's good for the Chabad economy." First of all, probably invest in Chabad businesses. Probably, I didn't know this guy, and he'll probably, support Chabad. Like it's great for our economy, and also like he lifts the glass ceiling. Like that was like my initial like gut reaction, and I was very proud. Like after that, like, a little while later, I'm like, "Wow, I'm so happy that like." In the past, it would have been like, "Oh, what did he do already?" You know what I mean? Oh, you know what I mean? I thought of that. It was my idea, but he took my idea, and like literally, didn't go by maybe 6 months or a year, and he actually Like I didn't know him, but someone introduced him to me, and he invested in a deal with me. It was a very interesting like
right,
like and it all, and not that like.
Right, no, I understand the idea.
It was like I feel like I opened up that like channel, like wow. Like it doesn't have to. It's not a zero-sum game. Anyway, maybe we went to jealousy away from money, but
no, they're all connected.
Very interconnected.
They're all connected. The thing about it, if you look in general, any of these ideas, they need a lot of supporting concepts, right? Because they're not eternal ideas, right? An eternal idea can live on its own, can stand on its own. It's truth by itself. When you have a lie always needs to be supported by something else.
Right.
Right. So even the example I gave of the guy earlier, where he has all this trauma and suffering that led to him believing a lie about himself. And what's the lie that it needs to be supported by? The lie that his suffering is not deserving of attention. Right? Like lies always need more lies. So when we're serving money, then all of a sudden jealousy comes around, and then sexual problems. Right. Like everything. Right. They all come together, and they need a lot of they need a lot of support.
You want to know just a plug for the House of More? Like guys came, I don't even know what they do. Like we spent the whole Simchas Torah 3 days Yom Tov with them, or the whole 3-day Rosh Hashanah. Like no one spoke about money, and no one speaks about what you do. Right. You know what I mean? Like it to me, like when I see like grown men talking about like money so quickly, like it's actually like. It's dirty. I don't know. Like, it's like, you want to talk about money in a professional sense? You're doing business. It's important. But like, it's almost like it's the only way we know how. It's very embarrassing. Like, how are you? What's your name? What do you do? It's like, it's so. I don't know. It's a reflection of the society.
Yes. No, I understand 100. I understand 100%. But what's interesting about it is similar to sex, is that if we divorce ourselves completely from it, it's also unhealthy. But even if we divorce ourselves, I think at this point, right, even if we divorce ourselves from the abundant aspects of it.
Right.
Like, okay, I'll have just enough for what I need. No, I don't want it. Why just enough for what I need?
Yeah, we do so much. So I want to try and go back, because like, why did no one talk about it over Yom? Like, why don't I know what certain people like? I don't know what their occupation is. I spent the whole Yom Tov with them.
Because it wasn't the purpose of it.
Yeah, it was like...
Meaning typically what it's done, typically why is it done? Exactly like you said. It's in order to size someone up. Can I get something from them? Are they of value to me? I think
we were just connecting on a much deeper level, on a much more intimate... Like we were actually connecting in a real... People were showing up real with what really matters, not just, this is what I have.
Yeah, my brother was he's part of the show, and afterwards he's like, I don't think I've ever been in a show where like so little like nonsense was spoken about. Like nothing. Like the concepts, even when we weren't davening, we weren't spoken about it. Like people were talking about God and connecting and putting their work and what they learned. He's like, I don't think I've ever been in a show where there was so little of that. And I think it's similar to recovery. The same thing happens in recovery. It's irrelevant. You don't get to get to use that socially in the same way here as you would in other places. It's not why we're here. But I'm thinking about my own journey with money is, first of all, a lot of the ancillary feelings that were associated with it, which for me, a lot of this anxiety, like constant fear. I'm going to lose it. I need to protect it constantly, just in all sorts of ways. I need to protect my inventory. I need to protect my money. Where is it being invested? Who owes me? What contracts? It just felt like this need to constantly protect. What does it say? Like a Shabbos, Shamar v'Zachar, right? I had to do it with my, like, constantly. I was like a watchdog over the money. And eventually when I came, and a lot of that fed into the addiction. A lot of my anxiety was around it. A lot of my stress was around it. A lot of the negative feelings that would come up inside me that overwhelmed me, I needed to numb through addiction. So I started having to work through it. And then it became Evan Masu Habanim. I became disgusted. Wow. I became disgusted by money. Disgusted. And I wanted to sell my business. I wanted to be done. I'm like, ugh, disgusting. I would be around, social circles where the first thing was talking about money. I'm like, this whole money thing is disgusting, disgusting, disgusting. I wanted no part of it. And eventually, through trying to sell my business and get out of it, it never quite worked. Although I was able to distance myself more from it and build a team, I wasn't able to escape it completely. And there was no scenario that I found where I can leave it without a ton of debt, without a ton of debt and responsibility and more problems. I was like, okay, it's the least stressful is to stay in the business. And eventually I found that there's the other side of it, very similar to what we spoke about with sex, is at some point we need to just kind of clean house. Like, I don't want any of this. And then afterwards we realized that abstinence is a problem as well. And I think it's the same is true with our relationship with money. That's what I'm finding. Although I haven't focused on it as intensely as my relationship with sex and for as many years. But recently I'm noticing that the amount of the tentacles that it has in many years, my thinking, my way of life, it definitely warrants a lot of attention. And then just seeing how much it's supported by other people, right? The sex, our sexual problems are not supported as much, like I said, by other people. Right. Whereas this is really, truly built up. Really, truly built up and supported and celebrated.
Socially accepted to be a workaholic. It's like
even more. If someone's successful, we don't even really care how they made it. It's not so. It's not so important to us. It's like, okay, they somehow got there. Like it's
right.
It's okay. And I'm not even talking about like these extreme, terrible ways of making. Like I'm not talking about someone, mugging people in the middle of the night. I'm talking just, did they treat people well along the way? Like what? How did they? Like, does that matter? It didn't. It doesn't seem to be so much part of the equation. They can give. They're worthy of. They're worthy of respect. Meaning, there's a lot of. We're swimming in it. We're swimming in it much more than we are in.
Yeah.
At least in our circles.
Yeah.
Right. There are other circles certainly where sexuality is like that.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of the more promiscuity and the more.
Yeah, that is like what money is in our circles.
Yeah, for example,
acceptable. Like if you go to other,
Yeah, for example, if a woman dresses somewhat modest in another circle, right away they're prude. If they haven't had sex with multiple partners, like, oh, you're such a prude. Like they have to defend that position. That exists in some circles. So I'm saying the way we grew up, that's not the problem. But with money, we're
right in it. We're right at the top of it.
We're certainly like that, and that's why I think that's why I asked you about the interest conversation that with Yochi, it came up a little bit. I don't remember why, but I think I was touching on a little bit of something which just shows our very unhealthy relationship with our very unhealthy relationship with
money.
So. And I think, it can go deep. We can do hours and hours and hours of conversations on my own journey and own healing with it. But what you spoke about of it being kind of the God of all gods, is for many people, if we're being honest, for many of us, our barometer of if God is happy with us is how much money He gave us, and what we really want at the end of the day from the relationship is more money.
Yeah, it's funny. Like often I'll bench people whatever. God should bless you. You should be pulsing with energy. Your heart should be open, full of love. You just feel connected to Hashem. And then the person be inserting and a lot of money. I'm like, dude, I'm giving you everything. I'm giving you God. Like, right. No, but if you didn't say it, it's almost like maybe it's an ayin hara that I'm not going to make money. Yeah, I think also money gave us freedom at a certain point. We were very dependent on other people, and everyone had that moment where they made a few dollars, and that first few dollars they made gave them the freedom, gave them the security. And and gave them the validation, and then we just have like this endless pursuit of like that first orgasm, like we feel it. Another dollar give us, we'll just multiply that freedom.
No, it definitely delivered something. And for me, it's been hard to separate from the rest of my life. I mean, even something like this podcast, money gives me the freedom to do it.
Right.
It's not cheap to do all this and to get the help and support, whatever else. It's okay, great. And many other things that I've been able to do in my life, it was certainly supported by money, which is why it's very difficult to
it's a big one.
To not serve. No, it's a
big one because it dominates our consciousness, and it's like money and sex are basically the two things that are just dominating our existence.
Yes, and I think money more. Like if we're being honest, money.
Yeah, but
it's a scarier topic for.
Yeah, but those will say that money is only a means to get sex. So,
right.
So who's really on the top of the totem pole? Yeah.
I'll share something with you about interest. We'll see how it connects. But I've been on a little bit of this rampage with interest recently because mostly because I've been involved with a few people who got into trouble with high interest, and I've seen the ramifications on their life, and a couple examples I've got very deep into, like really understanding it, and others on the periphery. A phone call here, hearing about someone who got in a lot of debt, and they call me, hey, I heard you helped out a few people in these situations. Maybe you can give me some thoughts, some ideas, or whatever else. And you see the destruction, like that it wreaks havoc on people's life, and then recognizing, okay, so if this is creating this problem, and without the interest, this problem couldn't have been created in this way. And oftentimes, in situations that I've been involved in, all of the players involved are religious Jews. Like everyone, the guy who borrowed, the guy who lent, the guy who signed, the guy who mediated, like everyone involved in this has been all religious Jews. And then it's like, okay, so how did we get here? Obviously, what does it say? If it's a time K'tev Hashem, right? I think I saw in a Sikh also that if it's not good, it's not God, right? So you can go both ways. If it's good, it's God. If it's not good, it's not God. So clearly we missed something here, right? You can't tell me that halacha was followed and we got to this conclusion. It's not possible. It wouldn't have been this. If it was good, it wouldn't have been this destructive.
Right.
Impossible. And then seeing how loose we are around these ideas, but then in some other things we're so exacting.
Right.
We're so precise. This one can't be. Where did the shaitel come from? And how much is it covering? And whatever. Years ago, when I first started becoming less from, my parents didn't know completely. So I know at one point some shidduch came up, and the question like, does he say chitas? So I was saying, does he say chitas? Maybe we should ask, does he lend money with interest? Does he borrow money with interest? Like maybe this is I'm not downplaying the importance of chitas at all, but I'm saying, somewhere along the chitas, you're going to come into this concept of ribbis.
Yeah.
Like, are we being careful there? And then obviously from that concept, there's many tentacles that connect, which is just like pornography is not about pornography. Pornography is about one's relationship with sex. So this is about one's relationship with money. I'm far from perfect with this. A lot of anxiety is still in this arena. A lot of my stress is still there. It's a big topic for all of us. But recognizing what I've seen, there's no question to me that we're making some very big mistakes at a very, very foundational level. Like if we talk about sex, the mistake we're making is we're ignoring some, important learning moments. We're thinking the way we did things 150 years ago could still work now in a very different environment. It's more like the sin of omission.
Right.
We're not doing something we should be doing.
Right.
We're not teaching something we should be doing. this is the opposite.
We're sinning so consciously.
This is sin of commission. We're teaching it. We're showing it. We're giving more respect to the people who make money regardless of the outcome. And then our kids see that, and then say, okay, so why shouldn't I? Why should I be the guy in the back of the shul who's, my association with shul, like especially around the high holidays, was all bidding for Aliyah. It was just like this whole thing was all about money, and then whoever paid the most all of a sudden got the
after Yena, whatever it was.
It became all about that. Like that's all I remember from shul.
Right.
When I was younger. And again, that's not the problem. The shul needs to support. Everyone needs money. It's just this exactly the way you shared it. Exactly the way you shared it is exactly what I'm talking about. That you'll sit there studying bitachon, and if you really pull the thread behind it, like, why am I studying this so much? Because I heard this can lead me to money. Right? Like, there are some really foundational ideas.
Yeah, it's deep stuff. I mean, like, even to talk about, I'm no halachic authority on this. But it's like, there's so much talk about ribbis in the Torah. And then even in the Gemara, like, there's prakim of the Gemara are just designated to discussing ribbis. And then we just get around it with like one little language, we're good to go. Like, I feel like so much. Like, what's the Torah? Look after the orphan, the widow, the poor. Don't lend with the ribbis. I mean, these are some most basic biblical concepts that for some reasons the Christians got out, and the Muslims, they all remembered these things. Like, taking care of the orphan and the widow and not lending with interest. Like, I don't know. It's just like... It's a central theme of the Torah. It comes up so many times.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times it mentions these basic tenets. And like, even like, or I think I mentioned this to you the other day. It's like Shemitah, like we know V'zeh Dvar Shemitah, like Shamait. It's also similar to like a Prusbul. We have that, like your loans could continue. But essentially, like the whole concept of Shemitah was that if someone owes you money, when it comes to Shemitah, all bets are off. Like all loans are off, everyone gets a chance to start new. Like, it's a basic biblical concept.
Right.
And then like where they introduced Prusbul because people stopped lending money knowing Shemitah was coming. So to help people be able to borrow and to keep the economic system going, and the banks, would just stop lending the year before Shemitah. So they introduced Prusbul. But like, it doesn't mean like, if you want to connect to Hashem and you like, they did it as like a market correction, like they had to correct the market,
right?
So they're like, they needed to do it from a economic level. They had to keep the economy still going. But like, you want to go and add and kedusha and ascend to level, like this is
but some of these are even like very, very basic. It's like you said, like very basic, rock bottom.
This is basic concepts.
Yeah.
Like, it's very dirty interest. There's a lot of, like, never mind all the spiritual things. You're crushing someone.
Yeah, there's a real risk with many of these things. When you get to, they say like truth is simple, right? Truth is eternal. What does it mean? It's like when I have a concept, it'll just I'll be able to teach this. I'll be able to say this forever. It's timeless.
Right.
And also, for example, something that's structured well, right, will last a very long time. Problem with interest oftentimes is that you've entered an unsustainable transaction, right? Not to go into, like, for example, the cash advance business too far, because that's on the other side of the equation, and I'm not here to disparage a whole industry, and I don't know what everyone's practice is in all regards, and we're talking about the other side of it anyway. But just as an example, very often in a very high interest environment, we know this person is on life support. And the question is, can I pass the buck to someone else? It's not really, meaning the question when they say like doing underwriting, they're not doing underwriting, say like, will this guy survive forever? Will this guy survive long enough to repay me so I'm not the one holding the bag and someone else is? Right. Like they already know this guy's on life support at this stage. And I've seen it with interest rates that are far less. People borrowing money at, 1.5% a month, 2% a month, and just how quickly it spins completely out of control. I remember speaking to one guy, and he got to the point where his monthly interest payments were more than his monthly income. And he had, he was someone who made a couple $100,000 a month. I mean, it wasn't like he was a business guy. But through not completely thinking and getting money, when he needed, and before he knew it, suddenly he had, and 200,000 of income and 250,000 of interest. He didn't recognize it. He just knew he was tight, and when I understood the issue, I said, can we sit down and look at all the numbers, everything? Look at you, say this is unsustainable. And if you just let's start tracking the numbers. Look where this goes. It's here at this number now, but it goes up because you're very, the term that I've seen, a debtor's prison, right? And many people, and there's no question to me that many people will hear what we're saying right now. They themselves right now find themselves in a debtor's prison. That it's a concept, for example, right? You talk about Jewish concepts. It's a concept of pidyon shvuyin. Rescuing someone from a debtor's prison, that is pidyon shvuyin. One of the, within the mitzvah of pidyon shvuyin, one of the, wow. I don't remember where I came across this, but one of the prisons that someone can be in is a debtor's prison. That they can sit there and they're stuck. Wow. And it's the concept.
Hey, it's a real prison.
It's a real prison. For those who are in it, and there's no question, me, some people listen to it right now are in it, it's a real prison. Someone gets to a place where they're completely beholden to their
master. It is a real prison.
I don't know if I saw or heard it, the name of Rav Nachman, that one of the reasons why we're not allowed to charge interest is that when someone loans another person's money, they get their mazel. So they get their mazel, and you want money on top. I mean, you're already getting something from them when you're loaning the money. You're getting their mazel, whatever that means.
Wow.
But you said something about it being foundational, right? Interest being foundational. Yeah. So I came across this concept of interest has been playing in my head, from personal experience, and that's the way I come at it, right? Like real life, we're gonna find it in real life, and then afterwards we source it in the books the same way it came about with sex. We saw the halachas, but it didn't feel real until we couldn't stop watching porn. It's like, okay, maybe they had a point, and the same is true here. So I was flipping through Lekut Sichos, and I noticed one caught my eye on interest. So I learned it was a completely different parsha. I think Parshas Bahar was talking about, and the Rebbe explains why it's foundational, from a Kabbalistic and halachic perspective, and it's really interesting. So he says that one of the concept of the mitzvah is how we connect to Hashem. So how are we connecting? What is the concept of connecting? He says there's two aspects to connecting. One is that God did this thing before us. So if we're putting on tefillin, God has put on tefillin. If we're Shabbos, God has kept Shabbos, right? Like it says about Shabbos, right? God rested on the seventh day, so we're resting on the seventh day. And the second aspect of that connection is that when we do it, God does it. Right? So there's somewhere it says when we're learning Torah, it says if God is facing us, learning as well. So he's engaged in that. Okay, so
say it in the bar mitzvah, something.
Right.
Right. I forget the lashon where it comes from, but basically Hashem mimics Hashem tzilcha. God is your shadow. Whatever you're doing.
Yes.
Anyway, okay.
But so in some sense, it's like God did it, so then we're doing it, and then when we do it, it causes God to do it.
Right.
Okay. So there's a concept that everything. Right, this world, we're meant to work for what we get. That's just the way it is. When we don't work for our achievements, then there isn't satisfaction.
Right.
It's bread of shame, as they say. So everything we're supposed to work for. Okay, so even this concept that we do something and God mimics us, that concept has to be earned. And the Rebbe says, you know how you earn that? Through being careful with interest. Through being careful with interest.
Wow.
He says the reason why is because essentially, what's interest? Interest is trying to earn something for yesterday's work. So here, I'm going to give this guy money. I'm going to take no risk in what happens, right? This guy has the risk associated with it. The money's his. The money's his to use as he wants. He can use it fully. He owes me as a debt, but this money, right? If you gave a guy a gold coin, that gold coin you expect him to use. He doesn't have to return that gold coin. Right. He has to return the same value to you plus a little bit. So, but the longer it goes, the more money you make. So that means you're trying to earn something on yesterday's efforts. And then if you start going a year, 2 years out, you say you're trying to earn something on
2 years ago's efforts.
2 years ago's efforts. So it says then God does the same thing with you. says, I'm connected, so I'm going to connect with you through your mitzvah. The fact that I did it once, not the fact that I'm doing it now.
Wow.
Right? So I don't understand exactly what that means. I have to be honest. I don't understand exactly what that means. God's doing it with us. I don't. But the concept of it being foundational, like absolutely foundational to a relationship with God, being careful with this. And there's something interesting also is I thought, it felt to me like the absence of, like, how does the absence of something work? I just don't do it. Right? I say, okay, if you didn't eat non-kosher, right? Like, how does that work? Like, why is that work that gets something? So I think Rashi explained to someone else that it's nature. It's like literally interest is like our nature will pull us there. So we have to work especially hard.
Wow.
We have to work especially hard not to.
Right.
Not to go there. Because our nature, interest is not only on money, interest in everything. We lend someone eggs. Hey, I lend someone our cow. Give me a little bit extra. Give me something. And give me something in return. Give me something.
Wow.
It's just our nature.
It's natural when you're lending money to want to charge interest.
To lend anything. Right? Interest is on everything.
Right.
If you loan someone a cow and you say, pay me back a cow plus,
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, on the flip side, I mean, lending people money interest-free is tremendous mitzvah. Gemilas Chasadim is is one of the greatest mitzvahs out there. I mean, it's the greatest forms of tzedakah. It's like,
right, but what's interesting is that's not what it says. It doesn't say if you lend money interest-free.
You're saying just by the fact that you don't do it.
Right, just the fact that you don't do it. Just the fact that you don't do it. By not engaging in it, so it's foundational. It's foundational. That's what you were saying earlier. This is a foundational idea.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm mentioning it is I keep saying this, is I'm coming at things from human experience and human suffering and people running into to challenges. And then based on that, I start talking. And then when you find that it actually sources back to something, then, okay, I'll bring it from that perspective. But I'm not teaching today, Kuf Lamed Tes and tomorrow Kuf Mem of Shulchan Aruch. That's not what I'm here to talk about. Someone else does that. It's very important. I'm not downplaying that. But what I'm saying is that for me, I'm looking at the real human consequences of being careless in this regard, and that people are paying a very, very heavy price. And then how this extends.
And it's a real degradation of our society. It's eating away at our. We're talking about sexual immorality, destroying society, the Mabel.
Yeah.
Spoke about before. It's like it's one of the pitfalls that really eat away at a society.
Yeah. And there are very many aspects of this where you see money playing a role, right? There are bar mitzvahs that I've walked into that you can see the intention was, not about how much money someone spent it, you can see the intention was to show up the other people in the community. Like this living with the Joneses could now be called living with the Katzes. I mean, it's like, what is it called? To not live with the Joneses. Keeping up with the Joneses, right? Keep up with the cat. Like we've been infected by this in very, very serious ways. And you're walking to bar mitzvah, you're walking into weddings, you're walking into other things, and you can see the energy behind it was to compete or to feel better in some way. And it's all of us. It's all of us are doing some of these things. Like someone shared with me, he said, in some communities, it's like it's a firing squad and we're killing ourselves. Like we're spending crazy money on a lot of things only so we don't feel worse from the other people who are coming. But weren't we supposed to be a family? Like imagine like two brothers killing each other over competing to feel better. And in the meantime, you spent 50% of 75% or sometimes even more of your earnings in order to do that. Like in the meantime, you're two brothers who are meant to protect each other.
Yeah.
And you've squandered most of your earnings in order to feel better. The bottom line is this. We have to work on our insecurities. No, the consequences are very severe. The consequences of not working on our insecurities.
Yeah, they're very severe.
Very severe.
The consequences and the reward of being in our power is so powerful. Like living in our strength, in our own energy, not needing to constantly be validated by other people is so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, we can go on these topics for a long time.
I wanted to share two things.
Go ahead.
I got to, actually Rabbi YY commented after my podcast. He said there are two things you didn't communicate about enough. Number one was like how I got into addiction. Like how does a good frum boy from a great family end up, in the throes of sex addiction? And I think it goes a little bit to what you were saying before about like being such a loser that you don't even have a story. Like I feel like in a little bit my story represents a silent majority. Like I wasn't abused when I was younger. I don't come from a very neglectful home. My parents are married. I have a beautiful relationship with my parents and my 12 siblings. Like there's no, and a big part of my healing was early recovery was there was no overt trauma to speak to. I didn't have a terribly abusive teacher or who embarrassed me in public for a year straight until I decided that that's it with it all and I'm running away. And part of me and part of me carried, and I wasn't either the most aggressive, bottom lines. And
oh, you're saying meaning even within the addiction, it wasn't
I wasn't
it didn't spin to the point. It didn't spin out of control the way you'd hear others,
other people's stories.
Yeah, in recovery they say war stories,
right?
Yeah, and so we can feel bad.
Yeah, even that was a shame. So number one, I'm not the worst addict in the room. I was never in my conscious memory abused. I should take that back. But by an adult. I've never been abused by an adult. And I didn't know at what point, and to me, what I've seen in what I've come to, what I really feel led me to my addiction was just almost the institutionalization of our education system. I grew up in a very big family, and just being given over to the school systems and pushed along through yeshiva. It's almost I lost my train of thought, but I had something to share on this. But it's give me 1 second.
It's like a dehumanization of sorts.
Yeah. Here. This was the thought. This is very interesting. I had a journey where it's for a while, I never, I always grappled. I still do grapple with what's the healthy way to introduce, male, female energy, especially for kids. Is it the way we do it in, the ultra orthodox system where there's absolutely nothing?
Right. So you're talking to a girl.
You're talking to her. Whatever. Growing up, I don't think I spoke to any girl who wasn't my sister. Even my cousins was somewhat awkward,
Right.
That's how intense it was. And then you look at the secular system, it doesn't look like they figured it out either. And then there's for a while, maybe there has to be much more of a hybrid. I know some modern Orthodox, they'll have boys' school and girls' school on the same campus, but they're not together. So there's exposure, but there's not too much exposure. I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure this is an age-old question. I don't think anyone figured out the right answer. But
the right answer is getting married at 13.
Maybe. That's probably what it is. But what I did see very clearly, and I feel this speaks to me. It's and this is a message to, I'm sure, a lot of parents who have this question, how to educate their kids. To me, I was craving intimacy. I was craving to be seen. I wanted to be seen, be it by my parents, be it by my educators. We built this system which is predicated on devoted, mechanchim, mashpiyim. The concept of mashpiyah is not to come to teach chassidus. It's is to take genuine interest in his students.
Right.
To look them in the eye, to relate to them, to share their struggle, to see their wins. And like, I feel like we institutionalize like some of the deepest, greatest medicine. It's just like, come take your ayahuasca, move next. You know, like there's no, like we're serving the deepest medicine, which is the Torah. Yet like it was institutionalized. Like you have a bunch of, and not to talk against like all good people, all the people in the schools. I'm not here to talk against the schools. I'm more here to talk like the medicine is that a kid should not be pursuing sex in promiscuous ways when he's in yeshiva and when he's outgrowing yeshiva is intimacy. Into me, you see.
Right.
Intimacy between a child and his parents, seeing where he's up to, being able to relate to him, and intimacy in the school system. And like so talk about like, I don't know, I just felt like I was gutted out. I was pushed along, like next. And I was a fairly, good, successful bacher. I learned well. I don't know, within yeshiva, yes. I was considered a good bacher. And whatever that means. But it was institutionalization. So that's I
Did you see the podcast I did with Zach Gould?
Yeah.
So is it similar to what we spoke about, where he was asking me if if all the laws within Judaism gave me a framework for discernment, and I said because it was delivered in a very impersonal way, it just became book meet man.
Yeah.
And try to figure this out on yourself, versus someone who took a personal interest in me, my journey, understood how to package ideas in a way that was relevant. What is, for example, like if someone shared Timer Dvar with me 10 years ago, no relevance to me. I can't.
Right.
Don't give me that book.
Right.
Give me Out of the Shadows by Patrick Carnes.
Right.
Much more relevant to what I need at the moment.
Right.
Today, you want to share Timer Dvar? Fine. Good. I have something to do with this.
Right. And Patrick Carnes to you is like, it's not as powerful. Patrick Carnes to you today is not as powerful as.
Exactly. Right. But at that moment, that's what I mean. Meaning that personal touch that's needed. What does this person need right now at this moment? And then, and meet them there. Does that feel similar to what you're saying?
Yeah, very much. I mean, like, I feel like this, there's a very deep relationship that's supposed to be happening between a teacher and a student. Like there's and it's a big commitment for teachers. I'm not a teacher, and I'm not preaching to teachers. It's a huge job, but like that's the religion we're living in. It's almost like that is the way it's going to work. Like it's not going to work without it.
And realistically speaking, whichever teacher you're talking about did provide it to some.
Probably.
I think they did.
Yeah. They probably did. Possibly they did.
What?
Possibly.
I would say most have.
Yeah.
Most have. But if you think about the numbers, right? So let's say in a class, 25 kids, 30 kids. There's no way for a teacher to develop personal relationships with 30 kids over the course of the year. But maybe it happens that with 2 of them, 3 of them, that's.
I don't think it's. Why is it impossible? Just like to.
I don't think the numbers allow for it.
Why? I don't
Today
know.
you'd send your
class,
kids,
but in yeshiva, where it's like they're not constantly teaching. Like they can't call someone over what's going on. Like meet them eye to eye, have a real be honest with them with what's going. Just be honest. Stop preaching.
Right.
Don't preach what it says in the book. Preach, talk what you live through, relate, connect. I don't think it's impossible to connect with 50 people, 100 people. I don't think you have to like buddy with them and be the teacher's pet.
At least understand
it's
them.
Like there has to be a meeting of the minds. I don't think I had a meeting of the minds in a real way with any adult growing up. It's like sad to say. Like there was no adult that like had an adult conversation with me. It was always talking down. It was always preaching. It was always a teaching moment. It was always a way to, when you'll grow up, you'll understand. There was no meeting in the minds. It was very lonely. And it was like, Like, how long could a kid last in loneliness? We're going to find other ways for someone to see us. Like, we're craving intimacy.
Or to feel seen.
We need to feel seen, even, or on some level. We need a place where we could just be ourselves. Don't have to fit into a box. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and the other thing, like, he's like, maybe I should share a little bit more about my addiction. So, like, I don't want to go into my whole story, but there's one topic that I'll share it just because it's come up a lot. And, like, talking to someone enough, like, till he'll finally share. It's like, it's such a deep shame. Like, the fact that, like, there was touching amongst other Bachrim in yeshiva. And, like, there was some sexual, touching and things going on. I was touched in yeshiva by other Bachrim, and there was a sense of enjoying it. And it was like, I feel like it weighed on me and it crushed me so deeply for so many years. And, first of all, just the confusion. Am I gay? Like, is it, that whole was so powerful and so daunting. And, like, to me now, just realizing how prevalent it is.
Yes, very prevalent.
It's like I want to scream from the rooftops about it. And, like, no, I never heard anyone ever talk about it until, like, in recovery. I remember watching someone's podcast, some podcast of someone from Woman talk about it, how, like, she's a therapist and it comes up often. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, I think it was like in early recovery. I don't even think I've shared this with my wife yet. Like, my wife was watching that podcast. And I don't know. It's I mean, there's a whole podcast on its own. But I feel like it's important for me to share it because, like, it's so prevalent. Which essentially, it's like, guys, people they're craving some form of it. They're not just wanting to be sexual. It's deeper than that. And first of all, if anyone's hearing this concept for the first time, like, it's very important to know, like, it's very common in militaries and prisons and all boys institutions. It's like it's a thing.
Yeah, at the end of the day, people crave touch. People need touch, and it happens. Recently at a Dama, we do different circles. Sometimes break up the group in smaller groups. And at one point, it's clear there was someone who was. I remember he shared something about not feeling accepted. I don't remember exactly what it was. And Mayor asked him to share more. And as he spoke, he shared that as maybe he's in his mid-20s today, the guy. And that as a 12 or 13-year-old, he had sexual relations with another kid in yeshiva. Okay? And not from a Chabad background, like from one that would...
Oh, it doesn't happen in Chabad yeshiva.
No, not that it doesn't.
I'm kidding.
No, I was saying actually from... I don't know, I'm not so familiar with all the different communities.
Right.
But on the outside would look even more Chassidish than than Chabad. And it was clear it was very difficult for him to share. And, we thanked him for sharing.
The bravery, for the courage.
Yeah, for the courage. And I think I said something, maybe one other guy had mentioned, hey, by the way, something similar happened with me. And I said something like, I said I was going to share that. I said sometimes when someone shares something very powerful like that, I'll encourage anyone who the same happened with to raise their hands. That way we can see how many people have, dealt with it. You can see you're not so alone. I said, but I didn't want to because then I'd have to raise my hand also. And I'm not so sure I'm comfortable with that. And, very quickly, I don't remember exactly what number, but it was more than 50%. The guys shared of some experience or something that was creating shame for them and what it meant, and that they didn't share with their wife, they never share with anyone, whatever it was. And it was clear to me, it was kind of clear to me before this experience, but it was clear to me that it's extremely prevalent, extremely prevalent. And the amount of thoughts and the way it affects people years later.
The soul crushing is really the most important reason why I'm so passionate, because it's so deeply soul crushing.
Right.
Yeah, talk about the cures for cancer and Taita. It's like these are the stuff that cause cancer. These kind of secrets. Holding these kind of deep secrets inside. It doesn't mean you have to go on podcasts and talk about it. But these kind of things need to be released. Like this deep, inherent inside shame. This is what kills us. Yes. These are the kind of stuff that kill us.
Extremely, extremely toxic stuff. And let's be clear what it is. Again, it's like the same. It's all of these ideas, these supporting the ideas around it. Like what it is in innocent moments, a teenager exploration or something. That doesn't make a difference what it is. It doesn't even need to be defined. It doesn't have to label a beginning and an end or anything else. And it creates a level of shame and toxicity and secret inside it that could, one topic, one thing can sit there and hurt someone. So now I've known, I saw it with this particular individual who was holding on to so much, and I saw the release when he shared it. I saw what happened with others who were able to share it, and when that happened, how different he was, how changed he was from the human being before he said that to afterwards. He was just a completely different person.
Wow.
His whole energy was different, and he felt more, one of everyone else.
Such powerful work you guys do. It's so freaking powerful what you guys do at that much.
Well, you just started right now, so thank you for.
I mean, the work you guys do is so powerful. Like, I mean, it's tremendous stuff. It's like, thanks. Really, really is. Like, if I could plug. Like,
no, it's been an honor to be a part of it, and I go very much for myself. Yeah. I've been.
Yeah, you should know that's one of the most powerful parts of it. It's like. It's almost like you and Mayor and Omar are just like facilitating guys to heal among each other. You know what I mean? It's not like there's no like guru here that is going to like listen to my advice. Like I've been to retreats where it's like one guru gives all of his advice and follow these rules and you'll be taken care of for the rest of your life. It's like men helping each other, like just being prompted to like help each other open up. Like everyone has the key to the next person.
Yeah, and we've all been... At different points in time, we've all been thrown into the middle. Me, Mayor, Omar, all of us. I'll say.
And the energy is felt in Shul. Like all the guys coming back, just like show up with that same like willingness and readiness to get real.
Yeah, no, I'll take the liberty of sharing one with Omar Pinto, who I've had on this podcast, and I think it's important that I share. Just it's. He's been on this podcast. We did a beautiful podcast together. We did it called "Forgive Me for My Guilt," and at the time, I was recognizing how insidious and awful guilt is.
Right.
Absolute guilt. Schneer Hickson, who I've also had on this podcast, shared with me a little picture of a meme. It said, and the name of it was "Pictures of Frida Karaba," and it said on it that the feeling of guilt is one of the most dangerous feelings for us. We should run away from it as we run from death or run from poison. Forget the exact thing. And I was like, oh, wow. Like what I would have done to have this 10, 15 years ago. Wow. And I shared it with all the Adama groups, and a lot of people responded to me about it. So Omar and I did this podcast on guilt. But it was about relating to God through guilt. So I was saying, God, forgive me for ever relating to you through guilt. Like, what an awful relationship. Imagine years from now, your children come home and you say, I'm so happy to see you. Why did you come? I felt guilty. They're like, okay, I'm happy you're here, but, there are many other ways I would have wanted you to show up. Like, guilt is one of the lowest.
Right.
I'd rather you showed up angry to come talk to me than guilty for not seeing me.
Pissed off at me.
Right. No, but almost anything but guilt, right? It's like one of the worst ways to show up, I think. But anyway, so we spoke about that, and Omar has his own journey of growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, right? With a tremendous amount of religious trauma and pain and confusion around a higher power and God, and he talks about it there, and just his journey and exploration of connecting to it. At some point in time during one of the circles, like it was like he realized like now is the moment for him as he's sitting with religious Jews and everything else and sitting in that format. It's like, hey, I'm still carrying, like it woke up something inside him that says, hey, I'm still carrying this religious trauma that I need to let go of. And for me, it was a very powerful moment seeing how, yes, the one moment of facilitator, of course, this guy has been in recovery for 20 years, has taken a ton of people through the 12 steps. He's coached a ton of people on all sorts of experiences. But at the same point in time, right, we're all on our healing path. So we're never wanting to be the guru. That's never the goal. We're never wanting to be the guru, because the moment you're hearing us speak, how do you know if you're getting my trauma or my or my peace? We can't know. So it's more about going through the process in a way that we never step into that role. We're never speaking from that perspective. And as you yourself can open up and get in touch with your own inner world, then you will know what's right for you. Which is why, going back full circle to that level of passion, when you start feeling that in life, like what was the warning sign for your teachers? What was the warning sign for your parents? What was the warning sign for the educators that you were in trouble? Was that you weren't passionate. You weren't alive. You were doing everything the way they said. But there's no way you can tell me that if I sat across Avi Wolff, 15 years old, if I just watched him for 10 minutes, I would have seen a passionate person walking. I don't think I would have seen that. Not if you're describing the feelings that you felt, the feeling lonely. Not if you felt like you were on a conveyor belt.
It's a separate conversation. It's a long conversation.
Isn't it this conversation?
No, it's a long conversation because
we're having a long conversation.
It's very subtle. The loneliness was very subtle. Like, because outwardly, I was loud. I was with friends. I was, passionate to a degree. But, like, there was no intimacy. There was no... It wouldn't be easy to tell. Like, you'd have to be someone who's in touch enough with yourself to realize that this guy is not in touch, is lonely. Which you should know, I have a very hard time seeing yeshiva boys. Like, seeing, like, just, like, I look at them, I see the... I'm waiting to get to that point where I could, like, embrace them, but there's, like, a certain... I see their struggle. It's written all over them. But they're loud, and they're sitters, and they're doing miftayim, and they're giving a speech. And, like, yet I see inside the, like, confusion. And maybe it's all... I don't see it... I don't see it in other people. Maybe because, like, in other college students that age. Like, I feel there's more of an alignment. Like, they... I don't know.
Part of it is...
I feel like I'm talking I didn't prepare to talk on this. What I mean, like, I haven't
There's
worked
more of
my
an alignment
thoughts through. I see a kid who's in college, who's 18 years old. Like, he's not confused. He is what you see. Maybe it's just because I could relate to that yeshiva boy so well.
Right.
That I see what's going on, and when I see this college kid, everything looks cute and cool, and he's more aligned. Whereas, like, I look at some of these yeshiva boys, and I could see that inner turmoil, and it reminds me of my own inner turmoil I went through at that age, where, like, great bacher, learning, give a great speech, but, like, you could see how... I mean, you have some great bachurim, which, like, this guy is really in it. He's I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm saying. I can't really describe what I see. Do you relate to what I'm saying? Like, there's, like, a certain...
Yeah, it was a little bit different. So I'll tell you why it was a little bit different for me. The loneliness, certainly. But in many ways, I started breaking out of the mold
earlier on.
Yeah.
No, but do you relate to, like, when you see, like, these, like, 20-year-old bacher who's, like...
Yes.
Like, you just, like... I cringe.
So I think what happens sometimes, my brother often tells me, he's like, you know what? He's like, you know what I love about seeing your kids? Like, they're all so different. They're all like completely different personalities.
They are.
Just different, right? So, like, that's a compliment we should be giving to. Right. We talk about it, you know, chanech lenar pidarkai, right? Like, we say these words, but then suddenly, like, we're giving one model for everyone to fit through, right? And you know,
I was always fascinated about college. It was like, I always loved that, like, you get there and you could, like, just choose what you want to study. You get to choose what time your classes are. And I realized that, like you could be roommates with someone who's, like, studying engineering and you're studying math, you know? Like, in yeshiva, you're all competing for the same. Who's the Rosh Yeshiva gonna, I don't know, smile at? That, like, you're all doing the exact same thing. There's no, so, like, you're competing for the same, I don't know, head counselor jobs in camp. Like, there's no variety.
Right.
And there's no, like, it's almost like you can't, like, in reality, you're competing. Like, I was talking about Bitachon, like that, like, I have mine, he has yours, like, there's only a certain amount of attention that a yeshiva can give, and if he's going to take, I don't know. This is a different topic.
But it's the same idea because it goes back to, I already know what you're supposed to look like before I met you.
Correct.
You know, so we're just
correct. I don't know if you remember when I had it out at Adama a little bit, the mayor.
Yes,
it's like it was that same being sized up. You know, like, this is what you're supposed to, and how well are you going to play that role? So, like, I was playing the role very well. You know, I was a good bacher. I played the role. I checked all the boxes. You know, and, like, that's the feeling that like, I feel for those boys. Like, their personality was, it's not the personality, but, like, they're so well playing the role that, like, their sense of self was gutted in the meantime. Like, their access to self, their access to their connection with Torah, and not like the way a Torah Jew is supposed to look. You know, it's like, where's you in Torah? Like, this in the process. So, like, ask me, like, would my mashpia? I would be an ideal bacher if you asked one of the teachers, like, look at Avi Wolff, great guy. Look, this is a great product of our yeshiva. You know what I mean? Like, they wouldn't, because I was perfect. And not perfect. I mean, played a lot of those roles of enthusiastic, get up and chazer, I don't know.
Right. So in some way you lost yourself in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I had to sum up religious trauma, right now having seen a good amount of it, and, you know, in Adama, we've seen a fair amount of, you know, seeing patterns. The pain that's almost across the board, it was mine as well, is the message that was received is that the religion is more important than me. Yeah. And the amount of people who've absorbed this, it's very, very painful. And to watch it from our parents, from our teachers, and from the ones we care about the most.
Our parents believe that about themselves. So obviously they're going to believe that about their kids, you know. It's like when you put the institution before the individual. It's like it's communism in a certain sense. It's like the
communism. It's very, also, it's like an Islamic idea a little bit, I think, also.
Yeah.
Right? Meaning I don't think they would be offended if I said that.
Yeah.
Meaning it's the community
comes before the individual.
Before the individual. And if you take America, for example, I don't know where America is now, right? But like the American idea, like the individual, very much individual before.
We'll know tomorrow. Where America.
What?
We'll know tomorrow.
But America, right, very much embraces that idea. And I think Judaism, like it does in many different areas in life, it tries to weave two opposites together in some sort of with harmony. And
it's like the idea of the neshama, and like every person has a neshama, every person is a piece of God, and yet there's like the collective and the community.
In many ways, Judaism tries take for example, I don't know, the way we follow our calendar, right? So you have the secular calendar. The secular calendar isn't based on nothing. The secular calendar right? January wouldn't be around the same weather every single year if it wasn't following something. It's just following the sun. Exactly. And then you have the
lunar. Ours is the lunar.
The Muslim. Ours is not lunar.
Right. Ours is a combination of both.
Right. Then you have the Muslim calendar, just the lunar. And then you have the Jewish calendar, which is taking the two of them and kind of weaving it, a hybrid of it, and using the lunar for some and the solar for others, and trying to sync it up the best they could. Right. So I think in many areas of life, Judaism kind of tries to do this
synchronicity.
Yeah, this hybrid and this harmony between two opposites. Right. It's like, can you find tension in this place? Sexuality is another area, right, where Christianity says you reach a certain place, like put it to the side, be a nun, be a monk, be the priest, don't get married. Like that's the ideal. If you can not eat meat, so to speak, or or with money, divorce yourself from this reality. Within Buddhism, it definitely seems to move towards that. And then obviously you have hedonism and everything else, where it's like get as much as possible, which are also religions in its own right, just seeking pleasure. And Judaism seems to try to do both, and say no, let's live in this world, let's have the abundance, but let's not get lost in it. Let's remember that
serve it of a desire.
Exactly. No, let's use it to serve spirituality. Right. Let's take all of this physicality to serve spirituality. Let's take all this sexuality. I was thinking when you were talking about one way sex is healthy is when, as a man, certainly, when we're using it to give rather than
to take. Right, and by the way, that's extremely powerful giving. Like that's like a man in his full masculinity. It's like it's a great experience. Like a lot of people will giving, I have to it's going to deplete me. On the contrary, it's like so rejuvenating to be like in the giving position.
Yes.
I just want to say one thing, that obviously throughout this whole process, I'm not conscious that I'm lonely. Like you're going to ask a 20-year-old Chevre man, is he lonely? I'm sure he's not lonely. Look at all his friends. Right. Look at it, where he's going, look at all the jobs he has for the summer. But I was, I'm seeking sex. I'm there's a deep inner loneliness I don't even have access to. Like it wasn't conscious. Like a lot of people are very conscious in their process. Like, okay, I was screwed. This whole thing is BS. My teachers are liars. My parents are not reliable. Hasta la vista. I feel like the whole process, it just happened to me unconsciously. We spoke about last time about bringing sexuality into your consciousness and money into your subconscious.
And how did you find out about it?
About what? My addiction?
Your loneliness.
Only in therapy did I realize what my story is. What is this insatiable need for sex? What's this insatiable need to be seen, to express myself? It obviously came from a deep, soul-crushing hollowness.
So I would argue that you probably noticed it sooner. Maybe you didn't have the word.
Yeah, I didn't have the word. Obviously, there was loneliness. No, obviously, there was loneliness in me.
No, what I mean is when you notice it is as soon as you stop doing it. Because as soon as you stop doing it,
you're saying all of a sudden it's all started pouring.
Then all of a sudden the feelings start coming up. And why I feel this way? That's why when someone asks, am I an addict, which is an irrelevant question, right? Going back to that, it's an irrelevant question because it doesn't have an exact definition, and it's you're not a label anyway.
Yeah, I will just argue with you a little bit there. Even when we come into recovery and we give up, especially in SA, it's very defined, no sex with others or no sex with self, right? So no masturbation. I find very quickly, we're overeating, we're filling that loneliness gap with other things. It takes a lot of work in recovery. So 8 years ago when I was in recovery, I may have not even really confronted the brunt of the loneliness, the brunt of the insecurities, because I'm not watching porn. I'm just reading gossip news. That's okay. I'm fit.
I hear you.
Yeah, anyway, yeah.
Fine. I hear you. In my case, I found that even with, I've told people, you want to stop porn? Do whatever you want. Whatever you want. Just don't do porn.
Right.
You want to eat tubs of ice cream every day? Eat tubs of ice cream. Just stop porn. You need to get 30, 45, 60 days just free.
Yeah, for sure. That's important. It's necessary. I'm just saying.
But what I found is that those other feelings, when they come up, like the ice cream doesn't quite do what we needed to do, like sex does, right? So the feeling will still be there. Anyway, it's a different.
But fantasy could possibly, like, there's a lot of.
I hear you.
There's unlimited way, like that, because just get back to like really what we started with, like this quest for like more deeper intimacy with your wife and less foreign energies in you. It's in the beginning, we don't even know what we're fighting. We have like the overt, sexual activities that we're trying to hold back, but then like so many subtle ways, like we're still, it has so many tentacles, and it's like it's a lifelong journey of piecing plucking them all out.
Right.
God willing, next year we'll talk and we'll get a whole new realm.
I'll get more.
Yeah. Right.
And it's truly is. It's one of the beauties, and I keep saying it truly is infinite. Infinite work.
Yeah.
Another reason why that question, like, am I not, like, all these they're irrelevant. Like, once we're seeing the landscape, they're irrelevant. These are infinite. Like, is someone's marriage good? It can be infinitely better. Is someone's like business good?
Is marriage bad? It can be infinitely worse.
There is an infinite nature to this, that like asking, am I sick? It very quickly becomes an irrelevant question.
Right.
Anyway, we've touched on many different topics. We've gone a lot of different directions. Let's tie it all together, sum it up in some way. What is this? What's it about? We sat for, I don't know how long. We don't have a clock, but we sat for some time. What is this? What was it? What was our discussion about?
It's all about Hashem, I think. It really is all about Hashem. It's all about things that they're plaguing our consciousness. They're stealing our passion. They're stealing our, like we're wondering why we're not passionate and excited about our about God, about our marriages, about our kids, like the things that we're really supposed to be passionate about. And it's like, I feel like this conversation was like, we're just going through all different, very prevalent energy suckers and, leaks in what's important. Like it's I'll use this muscle, and then I want you to sum it up, because it's like, we're on a diet, like we're on this Torah diet, but like we're cheating on it. Like we're drinking Coca-Cola. Like we're on this not a diet. I wouldn't call it a diet, because Torah's not a diet. It's not limiting. It's expounding. But it's like, let's say someone is he's going on a juice cleanse. He's only drinking kale, celery, ginger juices. Right. But he's drinking Coca-Cola also. And he's wondering why it's not working, I drank the juice. I don't know, maybe this could start, like, it's like we have real, like, not to say that because we're dealing with nuclear energy, this stuff is Torah is very powerful. It will override it. It's our souls are so powerful. Like there's a lot of nuclear all over the place. It's gonna win out. But like, it could help to ponder that maybe like we're hindering some of its thrust through our obsession with money and sex.
Right.
How would you sum it up?
Yes, I see what you said. Like, we're talking about God, right? And like, what is God? Like, as an energy, like what is God, right? And it's like, okay, we're not allowed to define it officially, but like I was thinking, compared to other things, it's something that gives without taking. Right? It's an energy that we can tap into. That's, if we think about a relationship that's healthy, right? If we're talking to someone, we want something,
right?
We want something from it. But there's a flow. I'm giving and I'm getting and I'm getting and I'm giving, and they're not really separable, like separated one from the other. Like, for example, when you spoke about giving in a sexual capacity, that it's also so enlivening and giving as well. You're not losing it. You're not giving something from you. So one way to maybe describe the relationship with God, not God itself, but describe the relationship with God, is that it's a relationship that has that quality to it. There's giving without taking, so to speak. Whereas so many of these other ways of living, yes, they offer us a lot. Sex offers us a lot, and money offers us a lot, and even religion in a certain way offers us a lot, right? Religion without God offers us a lot. But in some way, it's always taking something. There's always something in the back door that it wants from us. It's like, okay, I'll give you this, but you got to pay me later. Or I'm coming back tomorrow for more. And then here there's a relationship that's cyclical. It doesn't feel, I'm not more tired afterwards. I'm not more drained. There's not a request. It's not because I gave it something yesterday. Now the next day I got to give it like a little bit more. It's not taking something out of back door. It's not supported by one lie after another. It's not hurting people in the process. And then at the same point in time, it truly is individual. It's a very, very, yes, who shared this? I don't know if it was Aryeh shared it, but or someone else. Like it says, like Elekei Avosenu. What?
Elekei Avosenu.
Elekei Avosenu. Yeah. So it's like first make it our own, and then we can start tapping into
what our
father's God was, and everything else. Right. But to just go straight to Elekei Avosenu, it's like there's nothing here. There's nothing personal for us here, and I think that's something that's so beautiful about certainly the relationship, the way I feel like God was introduced to me in the 12 step. Like I feel like that was a space where like religion was stripped, like everything else was stripped. And it's like, okay, just speak to me in your language, speak to me in your way, speak however it works. And you can come up with something that's individual and unique to you, and no one has to replicate it because it's your relationship and it's personally fulfilling to you in this way, and you don't have to get it from anyone and you don't have to give it to anyone. And I think if we're talking about one thing, it's striving for that kind of relationship, maybe making known that that's out there, so that everything else feels lacking in the way it is. It's one other aspect is that it's never done. It's never, meaning the God of our father is not sufficient, and the God of our yesterday is not sufficient either. There's so like, oh wow, we can read this. We can do this again. We can do this again. Like I've always been pretty good. Like when the last few years, like when Torah starts, it's like, okay, I'm going to go back to sichas, and I was learning. Again, last week I learned to sicha on Parshas Nash, which is the same one I've repeated so many times on this podcast. So many times I've repeated this concept of how money, that financial stress is meant to clean us of our not good things, so whatever, become a vessel, and that's why it exists in the world. And somehow last week I read it, and I saw like a completely different concept that I just brushed over. Like I was in a different place, so the same words, like these time to me, and it said, what are the things that is cleaning? Are the things that keep us from peace and tranquility. Right? We call it Mei Nayach, right? The waters of Nayach. This is Nayach. Right? Nayach is comfort, tranquility, peace. So anything that keeps us from peace and tranquility is something that's considered unholy and something that needs to be cleaned. So just that, to be told and to truly believe that what this entity wants from us is true peace and tranquility. True peace and tranquility. And anything that gets in the way is considered impure and needs to be cleaned. Nothing else is saying that. Everything else is telling us, you want peace and tranquility? Come. And then come tomorrow again. And in a few hours, and a few hours come for more. And in the process, how am I going to remind you to come back for more? is what I gave you is going to be on a like a time bomb, like it's going to explode. He said, joke that what's amazing about Apple is not how nice they make their phones, it's how ugly they make their old phones. Now they haven't been so good at it. Like now that
back in the day, a new phone came out, you couldn't even look at the old one.
Yeah, if I showed you like the iPhone 3G, you're like, wow, people wait online for this. What happened? It was how ugly they became. Right? they became. I was like, wow, what a brilliant concept they built. It's like a time bomb in this thing that it's like in 48 months. In 24 months, this thing is going to become ugly in your hand. So it's kind of the same idea. It's like, this woman's super attractive, watch her videos, and then one day she's useless. You got to go find a bunch more. Like, let's go start searching the web forever for this. And there's kind of this insatiable quality that's in a desperate way versus an infinite quality in a positive way. It's like, I got more yesterday. I can do this again. I can do this again. I can do this again in a beautiful way. And then the idea that if it's not there, you haven't found it yet. Like, keep going. Like, if you haven't found peace, if you haven't found tranquility, if you haven't found passion, if you don't feel alive, if you don't feel energized, if you don't feel unique, if you don't feel uniquely powerful, if you don't feel like you have a mission that's unique to you, that you have a specific skill set in your story and everything else leads up to it, then you haven't found it yet. Keep going. Like that is what I feel is... that's the product that's being sold. And it doesn't feel like the product that was offered to us.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what we...
Yeah, so what's the solution?
No, this is the solution. This is the...
No, I mean, like... I don't know.
The solution. I think... I always start talking about concepts in a different way. I really think we have just about concepts, like truly believe in the greatness of our product. You've gotten to know my family a little bit lately. Being in the same community. So 3 or 4 years ago, I decided let's put my phone away on Shabbos. I'm going to be more careful with Shabbos and so on and so forth. Again, Shabbos is infinite, and I said I keep Shabbos, but certainly to be much more careful with it. And I didn't bother my wife and kids at all about it. Didn't bother my wife and kids. Nothing. A couple of times, someone said medicine, I'd get fired up and I'd take it back 24 hours later, But didn't say anything. Recently, my wife pregnant. We're expecting our fourth soon, and just like that, she decided to keep Shabbos. So said she wants to do it, and my daughter asked her why one day, and we weren't. The house wasn't Shabbos. She asked why, so she said, I realized there was a gift that was given to me, and I just wasn't opening the box. Wow. And I decided to. So anyway, Yom Tov came around, right? And I saw, like my wife, all of a sudden she gets hit with 3-day Yom Tovs, and she's stressing out. And I said to her, Fred, you never took on Yom Tov. You never said that. I saw she was buckling under the pressure of this 72-hour thing. And I said, Fred, you never took it on. Just said Shabbos, right? I saw what was going to happen. That if she tried this, right? Come Sukkot, and you say, I'll stop. I can't do this. Right. I tried Rosh Hashanah. It's killing me. I'm going to try Sukkot. I'm going to stop. It's killing me. And then I'm going to stop Shabbos also. Right. I saw it was like, it was right. I said, Fred, you never took it on. You never said Yom Tov. You just said you're keeping Shabbos. Do exactly what you want. From my perspective, do exactly what you did on Yom Tov always. And then you have Shabbos to come and treat Shabbos, like you said you were going to do. These kind of messages, I feel like, where I said I can tell you, I can root it in something, but so can everyone root it in something. That's what I found. Everyone can root their ideas in something. I said what I've come across, like over and over, Rebbe letters and things like that, Mailam HaKadosh. Like when we're in this thing, we just want to be going upwards, want to be going in a direction. So if you can look and say that this is more than I was doing 2 months ago, 4 months ago, 6 months ago, feel good about your process and keep going. Like don't be worried. And sometimes going up doesn't mean doing more. Doesn't mean that. I'll share a story with you. We had one guy at Adama who, at one point, he shared like his very, very true frustration and anger around religion, and he had a lot of good reasons to. He had suffered horribly as a child, physical abuse, sexual abuse. And then whatever, he'd been to hell and back. I don't want to go into too many details because then it becomes personally identifiable. And at one point he went through a process, and during that he threw down his yarmulke and he threw down his tzitzis, and he's like, whatever, I'm done. And he said something like, I don't know if I'm going to keep Shabbos this week. I don't keep Shabbos this week. So at the end of Shabbos, I don't know what he did or didn't do, right? But at the end of Shabbos, I said, we're all sitting around. I said, would you please lead us in Havdalah? And he's like very surprised that just a few hours before So I said, to me, that was one of the most Jewish things I've ever seen, right? To wrestle with that, to question it, to be angry. Who are you angry at? Who are you angry at? You're angry at the person you think is controlling things. That's a very, very Jewish thing, right? So meaning, why am I bringing up that story is because sometimes you can say, I don't want someone to hear my words and say, I'm doing less than before. But maybe you're less than before. What's your intention? What's the direction you're going in? What are you moving towards? You're moving towards more truth. You're moving towards more alignment. You're moving towards more questioning, more, struggling. Like, what is this? What is this thing? What's at the bottom of this thing? Like, why do I feel this way if I'm doing something that's claimed to be good? Why am I reading these concepts and they're not penetrating? Whatever it is that we're asking ourselves, right? Just to keep pushing. Anyway, so I shared that idea with my wife. I saw her relax around it, and that's exactly what she did. And I think for me, that's rooted in a confidence that this offers more than that. Like at the end of the day, I know what I want for myself, for my kids, and everything else. This offers more than that. I'm not scared of saying that, okay, try this for a month, try this for 2 months, try this for 5, whatever you need, if that's where you are, right? Eventually, I believe that if she's truly seeking something, she can likely find it here. But not if it's done in this oppressive way, not if it's done in this really a fearful way. If I'm being honest, really, really a fearful way. But that's the feeling that I got was that this person's so afraid. They don't trust me. They don't trust their product, and they're very, very afraid. Anyway, so I think that's what, in many ways, what this podcast is about is there's God and there's sex and there's money and they all exist. And if you feel like you have God, trust your product. Final thoughts.
What are my final thoughts? No, I like it. I'm a product of your work. I believe in what you're doing. I believe in what we're doing. And like a big part of the solution is the conversation. Like just talking, reaching out to other people, especially around sex and money. Like it's like if we talk about it, we're ready. We're healing. Just this conversation is healing. And I mean, like within the solution is like just being brave enough to know what's bothering us, to share what's bothering us, and we'll get there.
Right.
We're heading. We're moving into messianic times. We are.
Right. I'm gonna end with one thing, just because something popped into my head. So there was a guy who wrote this article on COL Live against psychedelics. Eventually, he reached out to me. We had a conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, he says he was the guy, told me story and everything else. Yeah, and he said, "I know."
He took a dig at you in the article.
No, I don't think he took a dig at me directly in the article. No, there was another article that did. I think it was like on CrownHeist.info or something. It said like, "Be careful in your quest for more from yourself or more from others" or something. I was like, "Oh, nice." But no, this guy didn't. He called. We had I'm not 100% sure the purpose of his call. I still don't know, but we spoke. But he said something. Yeah, but he said something to the effect of, "I know you're the guy who's pro psychedelics." I said, "I'm not anything. I'm 100% not anything. Whatever I am is a product of a certain number of experiences. If you share with me a different experiences, that gets mixed into the soup also. Like, I'm not married to any of these ideas. I'll throw them all out tomorrow if there's another one that's more, that proves to be more useful, that proves to be more, I don't know if useful is the right word, but that strikes me as more true. I'm not coming into a conversation as the pro-psychedelic guy. Give me more truth, prove me wrong, and I'll go to the next. Like, that's all, you know. So I don't know why I shared that, but I felt like because it's like none of these ideas, right? Like we're sharing a podcast. We're not talking like these are absolutes necessarily. Like this is the idea and this is it forever. We're on a path. That's why I call it like in search of more. We're searching, you're searching, I'm searching. A lot of these other people are searching because we weren't happy, right? It wasn't fine. Like there's no way this is what God intended for my life. That was the only thing. There's no way this is what God intended for my life. So I'm going to knock on doors. And if some work and some don't work, like that's fine. Like that's 100% fine. I can completely disagree with some of the things I said in this podcast 2 years from now or 2 days from now. Right. And there's no problem with that. We don't have to be married to ideas forever and forever. Like we have permission to speak, to question, to be curious, to be wrong, to change our minds. Like this is not this idea of like so often, like I feel so many people speak from that place of like teacher and student. I figured out it's like we need conversations. We need to give room for other people to have conversations and speak and share where they're at and be wrong and make mistakes. Because a lot of us are getting something wrong, obviously. You know, I often say with mental health, like if there's an expert somewhere, share it with me because 80% of people are struggling in one form or another. So who is this expert? Right. You know, it's like are there building experts when 80% are falling down? So where are the religious experts? Because who's got it right? You know, so. Well, we don't have experts. Everyone gets to speak. Everyone gets a voice. Everyone gets to question. And the only thing we should be asking is, what is our intention in this? That's all.
Yeah, and I just want to add, if anyone's listening to this all the way to the end, I'm more than happy if you reach out. I'd love to if you want to talk. Always, I'm available and.
And we may need help with a minion. So hit us up.
Okay, God bless you all.
Thank you, Avi.
Okay, bye.
I appreciate it.